Hey everyone, I'm Jason Ward, and you are watching a Star Wars show about UFOs, which is the Making Star Wars show. But on Saturdays, we're talking about UFOs right now because we feel like it. And tonight, I am joined by my buddy Rob.
West of the Rockies.
How's it going?
Good.
and as you can see, he has a Nap with him, and he has Jeremy Corbell with him. And Bob Lazar. I'm going to ask that they not speak on this show because I didn't prepare any questions, and you didn't tell me you were bringing friends, which is super rude.
We'll call them Guest 115.
Guest 115, yeah. And then today we have, this is my buddy Elliot.
Kia ora. Hello.
And Elliot, you're in New Zealand, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Yep. Christchurch, New Zealand.
Alpha is your sister, right? Or I mean, Omega is your sister, and Alpha's your brother.
Yeah. Yeah. Kaminoan bros. Yeah.
So yeah. After the last show, I started talking to Elliot on Facebook, and he sent me a couple of photos that he snapped, and I think they're pretty rad. Like what was the story behind the photos before we show them?
Right. So it was just another normal weekend visiting friends. So in Christchurch, you have when you leave Christchurch, just over the hills, the Port Hills they call them. There's a small town, a fishing town, a harbour there, Littleton. And so we're on the opposite side of that big lake. And it was just at Diamond Harbour, visiting some friends, having a nice, pleasant day out by the beach.
Yeah. And you took a pretty picture.
Yeah. So we got home and the sun was setting, got onto the balcony, the porch, and I was like, oh, I'll take some photos. I'm always taking photos. Always taking photos and video. And took a bunch of photos, and then I went to my friends, hey, what's this here? And yeah, right in the middle, you can just see these UFOs. And it was just so, okay, this is really bizarre. I took another one and spotted something else. But in the photos previously, there was nothing there. And it was, I mean, I just showed people today, and they're just like, what do you do when you see a photo like that?
Did you see the UFOs like with your own eyes out there, or did you take the pictures and then realize that there was something in them?
Right. I didn't see them at all. It was just when I was taking the photos, and I was there for about 15, 20 minutes just taking photos. And it was when I was doing the long exposure photos over 8 seconds on my phone that it came up with those UFOs.
So here we go. Here it is right there. Like I'm not sure if I can make it any bigger on this one. Let me see if I can, because I don't really know what I'm doing that well. But is it getting bigger when I zoom in?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Whoa.
yeah. So that's pretty rad. Like when it comes to to like the long exposure stuff, it always makes it like is it not? Like I'm always like, I'm somebody who like believes but doesn't believe at the same time. Like I believe but I can't believe it.
Yeah.
Like, does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. Like I thought maybe it's like some sort of artifact, some sort of something wrong with the photo, the camera. But I'm pretty familiar with camera. I mean, I just looked at my camera roll. I've got like 13,000 photos in there, and I've never spotted anything like this while I'm taking photos. So, yeah, especially just right there. Yeah.
On a Sony, it goes ISO and then UFO. You just slide the button over, and you didn't know that.
Well, the UFO setting, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
right.
That filter. Gosh, yeah.
Yeah. So when you were first looking at these, like, kind of what was going on in your mind? Were you like, that's a UFO? Were you like, it has to be an error? Like where did your brain go?
Well, I mean, I like to be skeptical, but I'm pretty open to that. the unexplainable, the unimaginable, the the stories, all the crazy stories we hear all throughout history. There has to be some sort of connecting piece that really binds all these bizarre things that we just can't understand or explain.
Right.
Yeah, I feel. Oh well, I was with a group of people that sort of like, yeah, this it could be. I mean, like, pretty open to that sort of thing. Obviously,
Yeah.
nobody can really explain it or have any real hardcore proof,
Right.
or that we know of. But
yeah, unless like a little green
yeah.
or bug-eyed alien comes out and says, "Hey, what's up, Elliot? I'm ET." You're kind of in that
Yeah.
place of, "Hey, I don't know, man."
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Watching ET growing up with my name being Elliot, there it was a little confusing at 5 years old for sure. Maybe they're coming back for me.
yeah. So, and sorry if I hit on a childhood pick on thing or something like that with that one.
Yeah, well, it was funny. I was actually a few years ago. I read that. I think it might have been like the potential idea for a sequel. It sounded really terrifying, like ET coming back. And I had a nightmare as a kid. The exact same thing. So,
Yeah.
You read that, Jason, the treatment or the idea for ET too.
Yes, it
Super
sounded.
dark.
Yeah, it wasn't. Was it like nocturnal fears or something like that?
Yeah.
It had a name that was just completely like, "What are you guys doing?" Yeah,
It was the
I remember
Temple of
that.
Doom of ET films.
Yeah, they're like, "Oh, this one needs to go Empire Strikes Back," and you're like, "No, I don't think ET needs to do that. ET feels pretty good." on a complete side note, we're getting sidetracked, but did you guys see that really weird like ET sequel commercial thing that came out for Christmas like a year or so ago? Yeah, I both hated it and loved it. I was like, it's really rad to see everything that's terrible that would have been in the ET sequel, and we don't have to suffer through it in this one thing. But you're like, there's old Elliot, not this Elliot, old Elliot, and there's ET.
Yes, I did see that. Yeah.
Yeah, it was kind of cool, but it was also kind of like, they're just selling ET out hard. But yeah,
classic.
Yeah, dude. Like I've always wanted to have a paranormal experience or see a UFO or UAP, and I've never seen anything where I'm like, wow, that happened, or like I don't have like a picture that I can't explain, and like in a weird way, like I so want to pick your brain about it. Even I don't even know if anybody else is interested in this aspect of it, but I'm just like after you take this picture, like you have it, like, are you like, is it frustrating? Is it like a mystery that cannot be solved, so it frustrates you, or is it like a blessing? Like, how does this come out? How does this come out for Elliot? That's what because I want one. I want to know what it's like.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you hear every viral story of I put something up and it becomes viral. So I'm like, yeah, let's put it on Facebook. Sweet, 13 likes. Well, like one comment. It's all right. So I try putting it on Reddit and instantly, Photoshop, fake. I was like, okay, well, so be it. But I mean, yeah, I mean, I actually Facebook's been showing me memories of what's been happening, and for some reason it's been reminding me of how embarrassing I've been over the last 10 years on Facebook, and and it came up with the UFO. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's been 2 years already. And I sent it to a UFO enthusiast friend in Christchurch, and he asked to use it to show some military guy in Christchurch, but I don't know what happened with that. But no, it's been frustrating because it looks so convincing, and I show people and they're like, well, it doesn't. Usually you show there's a photo that's kind of saying, oh yeah, I can see it looks a bit like a face, or it looks a bit like one of these things. But this is just like, well, you can't deny what it looks like.
To be fair, guys, this easily could have been Peter Jackson spending his Hobbit money with his own personal UAP. Like him, Andy Serkis, and Fran Walsh are just up there,
just chilling, hanging around. Yeah,
yeah. They just blew all that on some drones. They're just out there flying around. You know?
I don't know if it's in this photo. I don't know if you can see it, but I actually noticed today there's that, just next to it's probably, maybe you can't see it, but there's some other things going on in the clouds. Like there's like a couple of other specks, as you can see up here. On the left hand side.
On the left hand side.
Yeah, like just at the top. So it might be hard to see. Yeah, you can see the specks. And it's just like one that. Yeah,
the StreamYard might be compressing the hell out of this image and not doing us any favors right now. Because it's like beautiful picture either way though. You do take a good picture, whether it has UFOs in it or not.
Yeah. I do actually have another UFO story.
Share it. If you're so inclined, we'd love to hear it.
Yeah. So this one was so about 2 or 3 months ago, I arrived home, and where I live, we're next to this river, and there's because Christchurch about 10 years ago earthquakes, and a lot of the area that I'm in has been red zoned, and there's not much housing there anymore. So we basically have our own sort of private park next to the river outside our house. So it's beautiful, idyllic. It feels like a holiday home. So I'm coming home from a friend's place. About 11:30, 12 o'clock. And funnily enough, I'd been going on a UFO binge that week at work, listening to podcasts, and I was listening to this guy, Dr. Stephen Greer. I don't know if you've heard of him.
Oh yeah,
I've heard some skip. Yeah. So I mean, one of those things, like whether they're reliable sources or it's complete BS or whatever, I listen to it, try to create an aggregate of information to see what I think might be BS or not. But anyway, I showed a friend this guy. He's really into meditating and connecting consciousness and that sort of stuff with all these interdimensional beings. So he says, and so I was getting really into that meditation and that sort of thing as well. So I thought, okay, this is quite interesting. So I was coming home, arrived, and I looked over to the fence, and just over the fence line where there's some trees, about 16 feet, 5 meters for us Kiwis. There was this glowing orb, glowing ball or something. I mean, we don't have glowworms or anything like that in New Zealand. You don't really spot any.
What color was the glow?
Yellow orange, It was quite small. I mean, it's really hard to tell. I mean, it was like I saw it. I was like, okay, I can't really describe much of it, but it was basically it went around the tree a few times in this other tree, and then went over to the garage, and then spun around the garage and went up into the air and shot off. And it's so close to my house, and I saw that, and instantly just felt this feeling in my gut, like, this is terrifying. I gotta go inside. So I rushed inside, and then I thought, now I'm this guy. Now I'm the guy with the story. I've got a UFO photo. Now I've got this story. Nobody's gonna take me seriously. But it was what I saw. Experience,
Yeah.
So that was it's quite interesting.
On a side note, are you a pretty huge Star Wars fan?
Yes, very much so.
Answer that carefully.
And no. And
be very careful.
No, because the reason why I say it is when we were, not to say we got disclosure going on right now, but when it started to move a little bit towards disclosure, and I'm like, when Elizondo is the head of ATIP and he's saying this stuff's real, take it seriously. Let's stop pretending like it's a fake thing to sweep under the rug. And I'm like, that means something. It's not unless Lou Elizondo has lost his mind, and there's no indication that he has. It's something that you really need to. That's whoa, this is huge. And I have a buddy of mine. he's a ball buster. I'll be honest with you. He's a ball buster. But he goes, but he's like, of course the Star Wars guy wants the UFOs to be real. And I'm like, honestly, if they are real, I want to know. It's terrifying if they are, because it changes reality, like as we know it. It freaks me out kind of to an extent. And so I'm like, on one hand, yeah, I do want to live in a fantastic universe. On the other hand, it's terrifying. And so I'm like, in a way, I'm like, so me liking a space fantasy is now discrediting me from maybe wanting to experience reality, or at least understand it. And so in a way, like I sympathize with you in that sense, that you're like, yeah, of course the Star Wars guy sees a UFO and has a UFO picture. Like, you know what I mean? But I'm right there with you. I look up, like, me and my kids. One of the things I try and do with the kids, because like I want to spend time with them that's not watching TV. And it's like, we'll go in the backyard and we'll look at the stars. And I'm like, we're looking at the stars, and we live outside of Southern California. So there's all this light pollution. It takes a good night to be able to see much. And even if we were looking at UFOs, we probably couldn't see them, honestly. But it's like, it's like, I want to see it, man. Like I said, I'm jealous of you right now. And I'm at the same time, I'm glad I am not the guy with a Star Wars show who's interested in UFOs, who has a UFO photo and saw one. And it's like, but trust me, I saw one. Cause like, that's gotta be, I empathy. I have empathy for you on that front. Like that's gotta be not necessarily hard. I mean, there's harder things that could happen. Right. But it's definitely like, geez, man, come on. Life is complicated enough.
Oh, hey, I'm used to it. I'm that guy. I'm known to be the Star Wars guy. I've had some pretty out there spiritual psychedelic experiences in my past as well. So I've had many stories, and people are like, okay, wow, that's interesting. Let's go.
Yeah. No, well, like when you see that, like that's one of the things, and I don't mean this as in like I don't mean this like in a critical way. I just feel like some people tend to like really gravitate towards having those kinds of experiences, and others don't. I don't know if it's like I try to be open. You know what I mean? But is it that I don't because I'm not open? Like Rob, have you ever had a UFO or a paranormal experience, anything like that you're like, okay, guys, like I know something's happening here in this world, and it's not from here.
My uncle thought he was Saint Jerome. I'd call that a big yes. Yeah, so I mean, like, this is funny because, so one, I've said it before, I did see the Phoenix Light thing live on TV, like in March of '97. Like I was watching it live. It was funny because there was, I was living in San Diego at the time, and there was a homeless guy who stole a bus and was driving around town. So I was cutting between the UFO and the guy driving the bus around El Cajon being cheered like OJ. Like it was the craziest thing.
Yeah.
But the UFO thing, so cut to, I was at the premiere I went to the premiere of The Dark Knight at the Irvine, the Irvine Spectrum, the Irvine Theater. It's a big theater at the mall. It's like an outdoor mall.
Whoa. I was there.
Yeah, you're right. So, and at the time,
The Dark Knight, that's when there was like a tsunami warning, wasn't there, that day?
Yeah, so you were there. We were outside, and this is before you can get reservation tickets. It was the IMAX screening, so we are all sitting outside, and it was just going along the corridors, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm sitting out there playing Game Boy DS or whatever, with my buddies and my girlfriend at the time. And I just got bored, and I look up, because nothing else to do. And I see this ball, this like pinpoint of light come down, right? No big deal, just move. And then it stops, splits into two things. Then I go, whoa, and then they both move horizontally together across. I'm like, you look at that right there, look at that. Like but people just see these two lights moving at that point.
Yeah.
But up until that point in my life, I've never seen anything stop in midair, split into two things, and then move horizontal in the other direction. Just took off, like.
Dude, you just made my paranormal jealousy double.
Because you were there.
I was there.
Yeah.
That was over my head, and I'm just like looking at my shoelaces, shuffling my feet around, not seeing what's flying up in the sky.
And for those wondering, well, why didn't you take a picture with your phone? I saw a 2005 Nokia. Like it was a white. It was like the size of a Nestle's mini bar. You know, like it wasn't anything pop. It was like an LCD screen. It had like a display 256 colors. It wasn't like I didn't have the iPhone in my pocket. You know, and even if I did, the pinpoint of light wouldn't impress anybody. It's that it stopped, split into two, and then went horizontal. So it was coming down or closer to me, like kind of down this way, it stops, and then goes that way to the horizon toward the water, the Pacific Ocean. Yeah.
Huh. Have you ever tried to look? Because we could pinpoint like the day and the time.
I know exactly where I was sitting if you ever want to go through it.
Yeah,
you don't forget it. You know, you're like, I know exactly where I was looking right here. There it went. Yeah.
Yeah. We should try to look and see if there was any reports of UFOs on that night in Irvine, or if anybody.
The problem was
saw
Ian Punnett was on Coast to Coast AM that night, because when we got out of the movie, we turned it on. He was interviewing Neil Adams, and they were talking about the Joker all night. So if anybody was trying to call in about UFOs, that was not happening, because it was like a nonstop Joker discussion on Coast to Coast.
That's funny. Yeah. So really quickly, before we let Elliot go, does anybody have any questions for Elliot or any comments that they want to throw his way? Because I would hate for us to say goodbye to Elliot and then you're like, hey, Elliot, I want to know something, you know? So if anybody does, like really quickly, like Vermont Mike says, if it's long exposure, then a moving craft would be a streak.
I mean, I feel like it takes multiple photos and stitches it together. But I know the second photo definitely was a long exposure. I mean, it was 2 years ago, so it's hard to say with the first photo. Otherwise, so I mean, but I know what he means, but I know sometimes the phones operate slightly differently, or the way they process the photos, but I mean, I'm no expert, but
sure. No, and then he goes on to say, depending on how quickly a craft is moving, it may not even show up at all. So I mean, so the fact that you have anything on there at all is, I mean, according to that, sounds like it's kind of rad.
Well, they were in Omicron configuration at the time, so
right.
Got to know your Lazar, buddy. Got
to know it. Vermont Mike says, true story, seeing a UFO is terrifying. And so Vermont Mike, you've actually seen a UFO? Because we'll have to have you on to hear your story, dude. Rick Jones is just like spaceship, alien.
Alex Jones.
Vermont Mike says, what I had seen once was a craft with lights and a triangular pattern. Yeah, you know, I have to say too, like the triangle UFO sightings are my favorite ones. I just think that they look the coolest, but also probably are the most terrifying ones. So
Kurt Russell would know.
Yeah. That, I mean, we were talking about that before, like Kurt Russell being up there when the Phoenix lights are going. I was just like crazy. John says, I was listening to Art Bell during the Phoenix lights.
Yep, me too.
Yeah, when that kind of stuff happens, you're like, you know, like for instance, with like Elliot goes and then like only 2 years ago has this like sighting or takes these pictures, and then here we are like 2 years later, and like the U.S. government's doing like an actual like hearing and releasing reports and stuff like that. Like, kind of starts to feel like you're living in a simulation, right?
Yeah. I had a friend. I was talking to a friend recently about UFOs, and he's like, you know, if UFOs came, I think they'll be here for peace. You know, they'll be here to help us. And I thought that was the most ridiculous thing ever. I was like, no, they're coming with ray guns. Like, but my point of view has my take has changed. But I thought it was very interesting. It's like, well, are they here to dominate, destroy, or are they here to help us? And it did make me go on a bit of a tangent with listening to, you know, different podcasts and learning stuff. And
they're just here to stare in your window at the middle of the night. You know, so when you remember, whenever you look out your window, there could be an owl face just waiting to stare back at you.
Yeah, but that whole concept of interdimensional beings has become a new concept to me in recent time. didn't really understand what it meant. But the more I've delved into more spiritual side of my life and learning more about it through the internet, most reliable source in the world. It's yeah. It's been interesting. Perspectives change massively. Learn about stuff, ancient history, angels, demons. It's like, are these interdimensional beings? Like, people describe angels, the experience of what's an angel. Is that some sort of other frequency communication with what they call UFOs or aliens?
Yeah, I saw a video one time on YouTube, and it was someone who went through the Christian Bible and completely brought out all of the like angel descriptions from it, and they don't really sound like a dude with pretty wings for the most part. Like they're pretty metal. There's like a giant circle, like a lion face and stuff, and you're like, whoa.
Yeah, I've had an experience myself on that too, which is
really.
Yeah. But yeah, it's pretty profound. Pretty profound experience. That the way I described it was like seeing an angel, but that was a different chapter of my life where I was participating in things that probably.
Turns out I was just Natalie Portman.
Are you an angel?
Yeah. I did have an experience. Hang out with some friends, just trying some new things. And got into a state of mind where I did experience it. And I'd say like the best way the experience I had, the way I saw what it seemed like was very much like, Tool, the band Tool.
Yeah.
The artwork, like you see that the 10,000 Days, the I can't recall the name of the piece, but yes, very much saw that, and it was pretty profound. It was pretty terrifying, but pretty profound.
Yeah, I had a
wave of motion.
I had a couple friends who did DMT, and when they both did it, one saw aliens like the little grays speaking to him, saying, "So now you could finally listen, huh?" Like almost like in like a funny, like nice way, but they were kind of like now you're listening. And then so like that rocked that dude's mind. He was like, "What is this about?" And then but then at the same time, another friend did it, and all of the mirrors in the house had Disneyland on the other side. So I don't know. I don't know what to make of that. I've never done anything like that. So, but man, does that sound like an experience for what it's worth?
Yeah, I definitely haven't forgotten it. That's for sure.
Yeah,
but you definitely know. It's kind of like if you go to Disneyland and you see Mickey Mouse or you see something from Disneyland, and then you go back home, you're like, "Hey, I saw where you got that T-shirt from. That was from Disneyland." After those experiences, you look at like history, you look at things in culture, and you see it stick out like a sore thumb, and you're like, "Okay, there's something much deeper. These symbols, these very ancient imageries."
Right.
If that makes any sense, but
sorry, I always lost your audio for a second. You can't hear you now, but I was going to say
they cut
that
his feed. They cut his feed.
It's Big Brother, Big Brother. No.
No.
You're back.
Yeah. I'm back. But in a nutshell, I had this age-like experience once, and it was like guiding me through, helping me. It was like multi-dimensional sort of, I don't know, using, but it was very like nurturing, helping me and my communicate to a friend things she was going through to help give her closure. And it was just like this. Yeah, that's Alex Jones artwork. That's the best thing. Like I said, if you see anything like that, those DMT looking faces, it's like that, but they wave around, and it's pretty profound. But the scary eyes and stuff like that. It's Indian vision quests or peyote ceremonies or something like that.
Yeah. Well, no. I find aspects of that side of it, like there is sort of this very like inside myself, this very cynical atheist who is like, no fucking way about anything like that. That's just like, no, impossible. It's this, it's that. And then there's this other side of me that goes, people for thousands of years have really stood on spirituality in a huge way. Like, who am I in a way to like dismiss that as being completely uh nothing? And then you look at things and you, like, for instance, the idea of angels in biblical text, and you're like, that sounds like UFOs to an extent. And then you go down this rabbit hole in your mind of, or is this me trying to reconcile basic symbols and shapes to fit into and so, like, my mind is just constantly going in a circle on that thing. And like, I always want to be the kind of person who doesn't shut down someone else's experience and like hears them out and like, here's what it is, what did they go through, and like what happened. Because I don't know, man. Like I don't have anything interesting like that happens to me. I want to see a ghost. I want to see a UFO. Oh, Rob, you seen a ghost?
Huh?
It's all true.
Yeah, actually, man, like, this is where I'm like, I don't want to get into this because I really will be putting the Robs crazy. I've never done any drugs or anything, so like, I'm like, I mean, unless you count black coffee,
right? Oh, caffeine is a drug, friend.
It's the strangest experience. It's one of the strangest experiences I've ever had. Probably second.
You want to? Do you mind sharing it? Are you okay with?
Yeah, I was like 11. It was around. Remember, I told you the other night I got in trouble for lying. My mom made me sit in the back of El Camino. It's around that time. So my mom lived in back. My mom and my father are divorced in the mid '80s, but she and her husband were renting a room at my dad's house. Just go there, and my dad also had another roommate that was like supposed to watch over us because my mom was irresponsible. So my mom and the roommate, this chick named Lisa, were in the garage smoking and talking because my dad didn't want anyone smoking in the house.
Right.
And I was in the living room, and this is like 11 or 12 at night because my mom didn't care how late I stayed up. And I'm watching TV. And we used to have a roommate in the house called Harold, who's he looked like that biker from Raising Arizona. Mm-hmm. The bounty hunter with the big beard, looked just like him, but super nice. But he looked just like that guy.
Yeah.
And he hadn't been there. He had left and been like 6 months. So I'm sitting there and I look over to my left and there's a window in our living room. And this guy comes walking through who I look kind of like Harold, but not really. I mean, that was just like the impression I got, but it wasn't him. Mm-hmm. And then he came into the house, walked in front of me and went, shh, and then walked in the back of the house. So I get up and I go, hey, Mom, there's a guy in the house. And they're like, what? And they go out there and there's no one in the house.
Yeah.
And it's a small place. He'd have to come through the house. There's nowhere. It was like a 60s house. So it's just bedrooms in the back, no way out.
Right.
And like, that's about the strangest thing. I mean, that's the second strangest thing I've ever experienced in terms of just someone literally walked into me and went, shh, and then walked in the back of the house and disappeared.
Yeah. That's fucking creepy, man.
Yeah, and I was told that the people that my dad used to tell me, because he bought the house in 1982, it was built in the 60s, and he said that the people that used to live there was a guy and his daughter, and the guy died there, and the daughter sold the house. So he was like, so if you hear anything, and sometimes when I was a kid, you'd hear mice, because we lived next to a park near the wilderness, so you'd get a field mouse in the house every now and then. Right. And I hear the mice like, oh, it's a ghost, and it's like, no, it's a freaking mouse, Rob. But I never experienced people walking around the house and disappearing, so that was new.
Yeah. Like I have, my only thing, I talked about it before, was I just remembered this lady waking me up one time, and she didn't really speak, and waking me up and taking me outside and showing me the front garden of my grandma's front garden, and it's this like, I don't know if it was like a crazy, like really vivid dream I had as a child or what that was. But then I remember going back in the house by myself. Don't know if I was sleepwalking or like what that was, but for full disclosure here, around the same time, I do remember opening the window and seeing a purple cow and screaming my fucking head off. So who knows what that means? You know what I mean? Like as a kid, like, you know, you see things, I think I think your little kid brain is just so weird. So like, so even my only thing I have, I pretty much have to like dismiss it. But that is yours is like is super creepy on two fronts, because it's like either a man came into your home and snuck through your house and told you, be quiet while I do this, or
and he was super fast, because I got up and I mean, it wasn't that long, you know.
Or it was. And as far as it went, like he looked like a complete, like normal, solid person and all that stuff in every way. There was like no indication that wasn't a living human being in our dimension.
No, other than like the door normally is locked.
Yeah.
You know, like it was just weird.
Yeah. That is. What did your family say?
My mom didn't believe me. She's like, "Why are you making this up?" I'm like, "I got nothing better to do." Like, I was 11. I told you at that time I was like acting like my mom. She's a pretty aware kid.
Yeah.
And a pretty active imagination. And it never thought to me to lie to my mom to tell him random people are in the house telling me to shush, you know?
Did she put you in the back of the El Camino?
All right. Remember that scene of Superman where she tells she just got a guy flew and you could hear her smacking the kid? Like,
yeah.
Right. Yeah, pretty much.
Eldred says, I saw a small group of Rashish. I saw a group of red lights back in 2011. Even my mom saw that. And then he says, Greys, scary little demons. Yeah, and that's like the thing about all of everything that humankind doesn't understand is like there, like I was talking about it last week on the show. There's like a part of me that doesn't want ghosts and aliens to intermingle. Why? Because I see them as genres. And that's that's because of so many movies and pop culture and horror films I've consumed over the years. But it's like, you know, if we don't like Elizondo always talks about, you know, you can't see, there's things in infrared you can't see, and you can't see Wi-Fi and all this stuff like that. Who knows how many dimensions of our reality that we can't sense, and you know, usually, and it makes
12,
me,
according to Alex Jones.
yeah, right. It makes me, but I mean, and it's a super good point. I mean, and it's like, wow, yeah, like maybe, man, you know, what if these things are connected? What if things that we've thought were angels, or for that matter are, depending on your point of view, are related to this UFO phenomenon?
I kind of look at it like my mentor Luke Skywalker would say. But he says, like, the Jedi don't own the Force. Like, it's like you have these religions, people from all different timelines, different backgrounds, they have a glimpse at this something they cannot explain, or they have a connection to, and it's their interpretation that they leave behind that creates the religion, the spirituality. Maybe it's all on the other side, and we're all seeing the same thing, but we're all putting our label, our spin on it.
Right.
So yeah, that's the way I take it. Kind of like the Force.
Yeah.
Everything is linked back to Star Wars.
No, and it's completely true, because like if you are coming at this from an atheist standpoint and you see it, you're going to come up with a scientific explanation immediately, or some kind of way of looking at it, like, oh yeah, they could be interdimensional beings, or they come from another planet. Whereas if you're looking at it from a supernatural worldview, you're like, well, meaning like in a spiritual supernatural worldview, you might look at it and go, yeah, that's an angel. Like, that's one of the things that Elizondo was talking about, was that there were higher ups who weren't pushing his information along because they were convinced that they were demons to be, you know, and that you should combat those demons. And it's such a scary kind of concept either way, because if it does turn out that all of this stuff about ghosts and demons and stuff like that is dead on, and that's what this is, then wow, that's freaky. We're screwed. I'm going to hell. That said, it's like, but at the same time, it's like, what if these, what if it means that we exist on different planes? What if that is true? And geez, man, it's like, it's one of those things where I feel like I'm starting over, because as a conceited atheist for a very long time, I came to these conclusions, and there was a comfort in it.
Yeah.
And now that that atheist has to confront the fact that UAPs are a thing for sure. I'm convinced anyway. It's like it's kind of rattled my belief system, or lack of belief system for that matter.
Yeah.
So I'm prime for a cult if anybody's interested.
Just in luck. You're in 2021.
Yeah.
You got a cult, and you got a cult, and you got a cult.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Yeah. I do think, like you mentioned earlier about, I guess, getting information from pop culture in a way. You know, the sci-fi, the paranormal, it's a hard thing to think about. How would a society, or multiple societies, that the world, perceive this information or take the information, even if we had, look, here's a gray on the screen with the new president of the US, how do people take that? Because when I talk to people about movies in particular, even the most, like something like Christopher Nolan, which is like so deep and philosophical, and these movies that have massive complexities to the narratives, people don't.
Yeah.
Oh, it's just a story. There's no depth to it, and I find that kind of concerning. I notice a lot of people don't care for narratives because they just see them as being a story that's just completely made up.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm kind of concerned, because when you look at history, it's all about narratives and stories that get passed on, and now everything's just looked as well. It's just this genre, this category. And if we don't have something scientifically material and in front of us, then it's not quite. It doesn't exist in their mind. They have to have something tangible, real. But maybe we have to be thinking outside the box to understand that there is something beyond our understanding.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that I'm right there with you. Like there was an article, I think it was in the New York Post pretty recently. I think it was New York Post, and it was talking about how like this UAP stuff is a serious concern, and we need our top scientists actually looking at it like seriously, and not treating it like it's a joke, and not and who aren't being afraid to actually dig in to solve whatever it is that's like going on. And I have a feeling based off of Elizondo and that other scientist dude, I can't remember his name right now, but based off of what they've been talking about, that I think we do know, but I think that it's not in they think it's not in the public's interest for us to know because of what that's going to mean. And it's like, like what is it? Like I know for a fact, like me and my father is very religious and Christian dude, and like I'm like if this ends up panning out, like this kind of changes everything. And he's like, not for me. He's like, for me, it just to him, it just puts a different spin on all of it.
For me, it's Tuesday.
Whoa, Rob is.
Oh my gosh!
It's an M. Bison quote, guys. It's not that deep.
No, I know, but it was but I took the M. Bison quote to like Rob is full Dan Aykroyd on us right now, like essentially.
You want to buy some vodka? That's all I'm here to. That was my whole goal, is just to eventually pimp my vodka. Don't you know that?
So really quickly, let's take one last look at this picture before we let you go. And so like,
yeah, great, thank you.
How cool is that? I mean, like even when you really look at it, and I like I said, I don't consider myself a deeply spiritual guy, but it is kind of hard to not look at the picture that you took and not have a sort of spiritual reaction to even like that environment. There's not very many beautiful places like that here where I'm from. And so like you have that and then you're seeing UFOs in it. You're like, maybe there's a connection to all this stuff.
Yeah. I mean, drive 2 hours away and I'm on the set of Lord of the Rings. So it's kind of like we're pretty lucky here in New Zealand. You just travel, you don't have to travel far, and there's just amazing sites like that.
Yeah. See, you live over there in Hobbiton or whatever it's called, and I drive 2 hours away, and I'm literally where they filmed the skiff sail barge stuff, and it's just hot and murder.
Looks great on screen. Yeah.
Yeah, but thank you for coming and joining us tonight, Elliot, and showing us your photos and sharing your like stories with us. It was great to have you on. And if you see anything else, man, come back. And if you ever want to come back and just talk about Star Wars with us one of these days, you're always welcome.
Oh, yeah, I'd love to. Thank you. Yeah.
Awesome, dude.
Okay.
Yeah, and is there anything you wanna anywhere any people you want to drop where people could find you? You want to stay off the grid? I understand both of those.
I mean, I don't not really up too much these days. I'm working on a solo EP, which I might bring out next year. But apart from that, no, you're good. Just look up my name.
If you're trying to make money off these UFOs already, huh?
Yeah, no, and I wanted to talk to you about music stuff. I just didn't get to because I had a super busy week, but I'm going to respond to that message about music stuff. I have some stuff I want to send you too, because I want to hear your stuff. But yeah, so we'll be in touch, dude. And thank you so much for coming on and hanging out with me and Rob tonight.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Bye. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, that was fascinating stuff. Yeah, they're really, really beautiful photos. I'm like
3-up. I really like too. Like clear as day. No blurrage. No, you know what I mean? Pretty good.
Yeah. Like I was saying, like I wanted to get a picture of something like that so bad, and like I'm kind of like dipping my toes in all of these different areas of that stuff right now. You know, like I'm looking for the UFOs now. I'm looking for the UAPs now. I'm on the hunt. And by the way, I actually live in pretty much, if you wanted to say where I live, without being specific to like the city itself, I live in like Long Beach. And Long Beach Harbor, all kinds of UFOs. All kinds of sightings.
Long Beach is a strange. I mean, it's literally if Sublime were a city, it would be. It's a very interesting town.
Yeah. I went to high school with those kind of dudes, and I was much more. I'm coming out of high school. I'm like this Kurt Cobain Bikini Kill Olympia trained punk in California. And then I have like all these Sublime guys that are talking about there being a Sancho and shit. And I'm just like, I don't get it.
90s hippies, bro. You know?
Yeah.
Like, basically.
Yeah. I'm just like, it doesn't make any sense to me. But oh no.
I did have a thought the other day.
Yeah.
Like, and this is a cynical, like, I'm not gonna say like the debunker side of me, but just like the pragmatist side of me. Like, given that Bezos and Musk and Benson the Virgin Media guy, Richard Branson,
yeah.
Met him at E3 briefly.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, I'll tell you about that in a sec. But what if these UFOs are really just, for the lack of a better description, just intergalactic like capitalist tech moguls who just got their own private UFOs, you know what I mean? Like this like alien Bezos and like Gray Musk, and like they're just the rich dudes who can just afford to go around, and because they seem to be more interested in seeing what they can do for fun. You know, can we turn this off? Can we turn this on? Can we?
Lots of stories about touching people's butts.
They're like the Jeffrey Epsteins of like, you know,
when you put it in that context, it starts to go like, oh yeah, this all makes sense.
I mean, look, I've had some experiences, but at the same time, I'm with you. I'm like, I can't go full in because there's always a chance that it's something that's fairly like explainable. Beyond just, it's Russia. Like, it's not Russia or Chinese, you know? Like, it could literally just be rich aliens that, you know, got nothing better to do with their money at the end of time. And, you know, the aliens who remained are just looking around at stuff. I mean, it's possible.
Yeah, I tend to, my hope and light theory, like actually, we should talk about Rendlesham Was
The
it a
Rendlesham
sham?
Forest. Yeah, Rendlesham Forest.
But yeah, I wanted to say
Rendlesham. It's all a big
Rendlesham,
sham.
Rendlesham or Rendell Real. No, because like in that the gist of the story, which we told a little bit last week, I think, but I wanted to like discuss it some more because it's one of my favorite stories, because I think it's the best story that gives us a time travel thesis or theory, for that matter. I mean, if you believe the story, then you end up with a place where that happened, and then this guy gets the symbols, and there's this binary code and all that kind of stuff, and then so you end up with, what does that mean? And the binary code translates to, what was it? Basically, we're from the year 8000.
Yeah, I mean, like, here it is, right? Like, they were like,
Study
it's
of
like on the
humanity.
side of the ship or something. Like, they put that on that little UFO out there.
Mm-hmm.
That's the one that they rebuilt. The thing about the Rendlesham Forest is I tend to side with Nick Fern that I think it's more of an LSD, like, government experiment situation. Like, because I mean, when I first heard it on Coast to Coast, I want to say around 2001 or 2-ish, maybe 3, but around there, around the early 2000s. I was like, all right, now we got like an actual, like military. You could hear some of like I think they played some of the audio clips too, like they had. I remember hearing audio clips, but I couldn't tell if they were normally Coast to Coast doesn't play reenactments, but I remember hearing like some of the radio chatter on the show.
Yeah.
But over time, so like Nick Redfern is a British documentarian who's kind of, he does like, him and Nick Pope are like the guys who kind of like talk about the British side of military experimentation and and whatever on their side. And he wrote a book on the Rendlesham Forest incident. And he did an interview recently, like last year, after he was promoting it. He was on Somewhere in the Skies with Ryan Sprague. One thing I like about Nick Redfern is when he talks about his book, at no point does he say things like, and you have to buy the book to read the rest of the story. Like he goes out there and goes, look, I believe there's something to UFOs in general. The data leads toward it more likely being this scenario on this case. Here is why. And in the book, here's how it's set up. Here's what we go through, and here's what we end up. And there's always he doesn't worry about not spoiling the book or catch me next time, or because the minute I hear that, I just immediately tune someone out, like a little bit. But his essential idea is that basically Rendlesham Forest is known for having a lot of weird situations occur there. Like the shorthand would be that apparently there was a story about Nazis dying when they tried to infiltrate the Rendlesham Forest at one point, and that they had these hound-like creatures that were seen. But not too far, like I think 11 miles away was a place where they were actually doing LSD testing.
He's in this photo right here somewhere.
Yeah.
it's Indiana Jones. That's why.
That's right. It's the Hound of the Baskervilles. Indiana Jones and the alien hounds of the Baskervilles. So
I'd watch
giant pulp adventure. Yeah, I would. So Alien Jones. But that there was some LSD experiments on British soldiers in the 60s, and this came out in the mid to late 2000s, or actually, I think rather recently. I'm bad on the dates because it's an hour-long interview. I'm going to read the entire book, but that these experiments were proven, and that they actually released like footage and and results of that they gave military soldiers LSD to see how they'd react under different experiences, and that the idea is that this was like a holographic situation, that they set it up so they could see how they would react. This is why like maybe it occurred over a few days or something. His biggest takeaway from that was that, and one of the reasons that gave him cause to believe that's the case, is that at no point was the reaction to this from the government like, did it actually happen? What was it? It was more on how were they reacting to it, the soldiers themselves reacting to it. And this was a mixture of American and British soldiers.
Right.
So he's not discounting, like Nick is like not discounting that they didn't have those experiences. They had those experiences, but probably under the influence of something that they didn't know they were under the influence of. So they 100% believe it. And when I know, and you go, Ryan, that's exactly it. But when he brings up the history of places that are just 11 miles away where they were actually doing that to soldiers, documented, and the government admitted to it 20 years before, this takes place in the early 80s. And I think my own 2 cents on this is, do you remember the story that was going around that they wanted to project a hologram at the 1984 Los Angeles Olympics?
Oh, right. Yeah, I remember something about
That
that.
was going around about 10 years ago. And I'm like, that's just 3 years before Rendlesham. What if holographic projection was something that they were working on? You know, like as a way
Yeah.
to like, we could fake an invasion if we wanted to, or just, hey, we could set up a bunch of F-16s that look like they're coming at you. Or we can set up an event of some sort. It could have been something that they've been trying for years. And then at some point they just went like, you know, like people saw too many
Yeah.
Star Wars movies and just didn't believe in it anymore or something, you know, like I mean, for real though, I mean, especially after Close Encounters, you know, a lot of these UFO stories, if you remember, we don't hear anything around the mid 80s. You know what I mean? Up until the Phoenix Light. Bob Lazar came out, but what that was, you didn't hear, there wasn't like major anything in the news other than Bob Lazar. And even then, that was 89, and it was like a tiny window, you know, like
Right.
of coverage. That's when I first, because I heard that live.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
So the thing, like, I guess, like, the question I would have about that, like the LSD thesis or theory, is that, you know, he said he had to write the words down to feel better. And I'm trying to like I'm trying to make these things work with a come down, because if you do LSD, you don't just do LSD and then all of a sudden it wears off and I'm fine, I feel like normal old me again. It's not like that. It's like you have like you feel sick and you have a headache and you're essentially hungover usually, and there's like all of that kind of jazz with it. And he does say he didn't feel good and that he had to write everything, he had to like do the thing, but then he says he felt better once he did that. And that's the part where I'm like curious as to what Rendlesham dude thinks about that.
well,
He,
I'm gonna get, it's on Audible. The book's on Audible, so
yeah,
I got a monthly Audible credit, so I'm going to download and listen to the whole thing, so I can, and I'll take notes and, you know what I
sure.
mean, give
Yeah,
you
that'd be
like
great.
the specific stuff for future shows, and so you can see what you think.
Yeah. Yeah, because it is interesting in the sense that like when they're only asking about like the soldiers, like they have no doubt it happened. That
Yeah,
also plays into the thesis that they already know about them, that they
it
and that they already have crashes and stuff like that.
and Nick isn't
So
discounting that they didn't have that experience, and he goes,
sure.
"Look, I was in school at the time. Of course, this guy is not going to want to hear from some kid." He's like, I totally get, you know what I mean? I'm in high school when this is happening to him, and he's an actual soldier in the military. Of course, he's going to discount what I have to say.
Right.
But I'm also looking at a wider, frame of data. I mean, one of the examples he gave was apparently they had like a famous general, British general, who retired, and he was like almost like their version of Patton during the Cold War kind of thing, you know?
Okay.
And when he retired and he heard about this, he tried to get the info, and they were like shutting his ass out of it. Which is like a big deal too. So
Yeah.
it's very interesting. Look, it's either UFOs or it's this thing where the government found a way to project holograms that can actually have a tangible surface. You know what I mean? And they're throwing around LSD to see how people interpret that. And that to me is just as crazy. I mean, first off, where is this holographic technology, and why doesn't Disneyland have it? You know, beyond projecting things onto mist for the world of color.
Yeah, well, I mean, depending on how much LSD if they did do that, how much LSD they gave them, they might have only needed some flashlights to make that.
Well,
seem
that's
like
what
that.
he said. Depending on what they gave him, it wouldn't be that hard to create a situation. That.
Yeah.
And
but
unlike,
it's like when you look at like MK Ultra, like stuff about that, you had like guys supposedly who like signed up in the military to like study getting like the common cold, and then they gave them all kinds of weird mind control stuff or syphilis, and it's like all kinds of like horrible stuff. And so it's like
I'm laughing like it's funny, like
no,
humor,
I mean no, it is. It's like it's so absurd and it's so crazy and it's super sad at the same time.
Well,
It's funny how they jump from you signed up before you signed up to study the common cold. Here's some mind control. That's a pretty big jump.
Plus, like, I joined the military in 98, and I was in from 98 to 2001, right before 9/11 got out. I got out in March of 2001.
Yeah.
And I signed up just so that I could get my art going and have a VA loan if I wanted to get a house one day, and to get into college and have a little bit. The GI Bill wasn't going to cover college, but it would give me that little bit of cushion while I was going to college to help, right?
A little bit of cushion for the pushing.
Right. So I can only imagine, like, signing up just for, trying to get my life together and work on art and get a VA loan one day. And then all of a sudden I'm getting slammed with LSD and holograms.
Dude,
you're just some normal dude, man. Like,
this is not a slam on your art, but your art would probably be pretty badass if you did some LSD and saw some UFOs.
So funny thing about that is, in college, there was a guy who, an older guy named Rick. His name is Rick Hargraves. He's an artist. You can find him. And Rick he was like in his 40s when I was in my 20s. So he's 20 years older than me. And he was one of these really nice guys. He did construction, and he lived in a Winnebago, and he always wanted to be an artist. So he's like, he got a job there as a janitor and went to this art school full time. But he did a lot of LSD in the 60s and 70s. And his art was almost a nightmare of It's almost like it's somewhere between like Marty and Croft, and like, you remember those tubes that had like the little like pebble like kaleidoscope things in the 70s and 80s. You could like turn it and you'd see different like fractal.
So it's like looking at Land of the Lost through a kaleidoscope.
Yeah, through a kaleidoscope toy. And if you ever find Rick's art, you'll see what and they would always pair him. I would always get him in my team because the other artists they'd look down on his art, And I'm like, Rick can be creative. He
sounds
you
badass.
Can't use him. You can't use Rick to do perspective and volume and Hollywood like stuff. We need that 60s Henson Lucas experimental THX 118, the college film year stuff with Rick. And we'd win stuff when you knew how to utilize Rick. But he was super nice and super but he thought I was weird because I was the guy who was like, we went to the moon, and I'd be like, I was a little bit of a hothead because I was in a school that they didn't seem like they were trying. When you want to really prove yourself.
Yeah.
When you're younger, you want to prove yourself, and everyone around's kind of like slacking. And I was like, no, we got to win in this play. Like, I just felt like there was no time when I was younger. And Rick was like, you got to chill, man. I'm like, no, we got to win. Like, so, he's like, man, I thought I was crazy, but you're a whole nother level of intense. And I never once told him about my experiences in life. Lord knows what he'd think about that.
It probably would have been the most normal thing to him.
Probably. Dude, Rick was my boy. I really I keep in touch when I can.
Yeah.
But he disappeared during COVID, so I hope he's all right.
Oh shit.
Yeah. Who knows?
Yeah. Hope you're okay, dude. But to take it back and then to look out at Rendlesham as being authentic. I like the idea of it. In fact, I find it to be the most sort of beautiful of theories that are out there, in the sense that if these are just anthropologists for the most part looking at us, and it's us with the ability to go back and do anthropology, see where we've been and understand it, not only anthropologically, but historically at the same time, like, that's an awesome idea. And that might be
and it's
like
plausible.
I mean, I'm sort of trained to be an anthropologist. I mean, I trained in ethnography for like 4 years, which is and I was in American studies, but my focus was in anthropology. My advisor for undergrad and graduate school was an anthropologist. And so I tend to look at things through that lens. And if I had a time machine, that's what I would be doing. I would be essentially getting the true story of humanity and trying to put it down as correctly as I could,
Have you read the comic book Chrononauts?
Nuh-uh.
So it was written by Mike Miller, the guy who wrote Kick-Ass, the Kick-Ass
Okay.
films and
Mhm.
Wanted. Remember that?
Yeah.
And it was drawn by an artist named Sean Gordon Murphy, who's pretty much known for a lot of his cool Batman stuff he's done over the last few years, the White
Yeah.
Knight series.
I
But
know
they did
him.
this miniseries called Chrononauts, in which we invent the technology to watch time. Like time as a television show, where we're looking back and people are like actually seeing what happened during the Civil War or during the Egyptian eras. And they end up going through like these guys that are like, these people are like heisting stuff throughout time, and they have to like stop them from, there's like a giant time travel, like heist, Ocean's 11 kind of thingy. Yeah.
Right.
It's a fantastic artwork. Netflix bought all that. And I'm like, that should be the one they should be making, not these Jupiter Legacy films or that, which was another Mark Miller project. I'm like, make Chrononauts, because just the opening sequence of that book is where they're just watching time as a television show. That is the most captivating reality TV we could have, right?
Right. Yeah. No, and that is in so many ways. Like, I mean, reading can be a very profound experience. I mean, reading can be deeper and crazier than watching any television show. At the same time, watching something, obviously, like you have like the Rashomon effect, where depending on your point of view as you watch, you get a certain perspective on things. But with all that in mind, like, that is kind of a purer way. If an image is worth 1,000 words and you're getting 24 frames a second at least, it's like, that's a ton, and
this month on Disney, watch the premiere of episode 4. You know what I mean? You can actually just watch George Lucas make it,
Hey,
George is yelling.
Hey, Song of the South, was it really like that?
No,
it wasn't.
Yeah, but that's horrific. That's what they're watching. Like, you can't.
Yeah,
there's no way to hide at that point.
Right.
Like, what should and shouldn't be taught in school when you can actually just watch history.
Yeah. Yeah. And so like in terms of like looking at it that way, you're like, yeah, they, and if they're 8,000 years away from us, I don't think that they're going to kill us. Cause it's like, for instance, if they were 200 years away, we might look back and go, oh, well, if we had wiped out Russia, then they wouldn't be a problem for the Cold War. Let's do it, folks. And, and you start messing up time and doing crazy stuff like that. But, if when we look back, if we, as Americans today, if we were to go back, do we want to wipe out ancient Egypt? No, they're cool. We'll let them do it themselves, or let it unfold, and let's not make that mistake, and let's see how it happened, And so it's such a cooler.
What if it's like a Loki scenario where like, we can wipe out Atlantis because it happened anyway? Like, we could, we could just test our time travel Hiroshima bomb on Atlantis, and no one would know the diff.
Hey, Rob, dare me to do it? I'm going to do it right now. You're like, yeah, it doesn't matter.
It's like Ren and Stimpy, where he just the camera zooms in on that finger pushing the button.
Boop. Yeah. So it's like that way, in that sense, like, that's way less terrifying, and it's also sort of comforting at the same time, because that in some form we make it, like almost no matter. And
if it is us time traveling in the future, then we made it, right?
And is that bad? Because, like, for instance, not to go on too big of a tangent, but in neoliberal theory or neoliberal doctrine, which is a doctrine that says anything goes, economics is the way to go. Destroy the environment, wreck it, destroy it. All it will do is make a new industry that will come up, and more profits will be driven as we clean up the environment. And it's like, oh man, and honestly, that's like part like where like you're like New Green Deal, and I'm like about it ethically. On the other hand, I'm like, this is so neoliberal in so many ways. It's like, yeah, let's mess everything up. Yeah,
right? It's very rules of acquisition,
Yeah, and it's all linked down to the trickle down economics kind of stuff and all that, right? Well, when I think of those. Yeah, well, actually, the Keynesian economics is like a little bit better, because it had more. It was like a safety net was there, like it was about a safety net.
No.
Whereas neoliberals are like, nah, don't do it. When people are starving, they'll come up with a way to eat. They'll make a new industry called potato snacks, and they'll just eat that, But it's anyways. Where I'm going with this is, as long as we as the West anyways are neoliberals economically, that idea scares me because it does like literally say that we would go, well, we're going to make it, so therefore we know that's going to work out. We could destroy the environment. We don't need to worry about global warming. We know we're going to survive.
How would Fox News interpret it?
Right. Yeah. How would they? Yeah. Right. I mean, God,
I know someone out there's like, hey man, that's my jam. Like, I don't care. You know,
come on. I like falafels as much as Bill O'Reilly too. No, but
Killing falafels is my new book. You know.
No, but it is a scary concept in that way. And it's like, should we know if that was the case? So and that's what I think, like when you look at Rendlesham, you're like, if that happened, then that's kind of where it puts us. That's the scary moment that we reach, I think.
Well, there was a theory being posted around Coast to Coast around 2005 or 7-ish, around there. And it was one of those time travel theories that you can't go back any further than the furthest you can go back is from when the time machine was first made. So, so if we made a time machine, if we could go back millions of years, if someone on the other side of the galaxy had made a time machine a million years ago, you see what I mean? Like, if we made a time machine, or the technology that, if the time machine turned on that we made in 1980, we couldn't go back further than 1980. Unless someone else made a time machine on the other side of the galaxy. That was crazy. Right. Like, you need this point to anchor you in space and time or whatever. But I mean, I was always thinking, like, man, it blew my mind. I was like, wow, that would be, and then aliens could go back and forth if they made it. But then we could only go back to
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
whenever it was made. Yeah, that idea introduces like an interesting paradox kind of thing, like, and to that, and to the Rendlesham thing, because that would mean that time travel was invented in 1980 or something.
Well, November 5th, 1955.
55, right?
We all know
this.
This
Capacitor. It makes sense. Yeah. And at the same time, while I love the theory of the time traveler, I do think that personally, I think that the interdimensional beings is the most likely scenario. It is the one that I think, if we do keep digging and are able to discover other layers of reality, we're gonna find something. You would think.
Yeah, I've always seen them as, like, I used to think they're robots. Now I just consider them drones, right? Like, I mean, look at the second we got little drones you can fly around. Remember in the 80s, there was always, every 80s show had some kid with like an RC copter.
Yeah.
And then you find out how those RC copters work, and you realize the kid could never fly one because they were so insanely difficult to control. Like, the PlayStation 1 had an RC copter simulator that I think Dave Perry made, and it was like impossible to fly because it's so hard. But now with drones, literally they're toys you can buy at the mall and fly them. So I'm like, what if they're just drones? Then they could go through whatever time and space or dimensional whatever, which is why they don't, piss or shit, or, because I mean, as well as I do, the second you get to a carnival, you're looking at those outhouses like,
You're like, oh, man. No. That was always my take on it. Even before all this stuff happened, is I was like, I feel like we're more likely to be visited by drones first, because if you were an advanced civilization, you would think you would send drones out to explore and get as much data before you bother traveling out there. I mean, that kind of like idea does make sense. But then we come into like things that, number one, is that you do have the the grays and all these sightings of aliens, of them seeing people with bug eyes and long black hair and stuff like that, all this like wild stuff.
It's not that one that gets me. It's when they report that they're tall Norwegian humans.
Yeah.
Like, what is that? Like, that's the one I've always been like, I mean, the Travis Walton story, the movie portrays them as like basically the bugs from Geonosis.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, but
Mhm.
in the actual Travis Walton story, he says that they're blonde Norwegians, that the
Yep.
ships were perfectly smooth and that they were like humans that were like, they look like, he didn't have the words for them, but like, they look like Legolas, right?
Yeah.
Legolas and the nihilists from the Big Lebowski,
I
you know?
mean, I'm usually into brunettes with glasses, but if Heidi Klum wants to come and abduct me in her spaceship, I'll go. I know, I'll go.
Seal's like, uh-huh. Uh-huh. Twice.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, but yeah, no, you end up with like these weird side mysteries too, like cattle mutilations. Like I think it was Jeremy Corbell, I think he was saying this recently. He was like, there have been thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of cattle mutilations, always linked to seeing these lights in the sky, and no one has ever caught anybody doing it. No one has
Yeah,
ever
Linda Moulton
been.
Howe did the groundwork on all that for a number of years. And although she
Yeah.
got a little, unfortunately, her name got dragged through the mud a little bit with that whole Nate Doty
What what
disinfo.
what was oh right. Yeah. I came across that on accident. I was watching like a UFO show on YouTube or something like that, fell asleep, woke up, and then this documentary was playing, and I was kind of lost. I was like, what is this about? And then as it went on, was this the woman who was gonna like have like an HBO kind of like reveal
Yeah,
or
so
something?
she'd been with Art Bell forever. She's an
Mhm.
independent journalist, but she formed Dreamland, the show Dreamland with Art Bell prior. It's a show that existed before Coast to Coast.
Okay.
So she used to do that. She helped kind of create paranormal radio as we know it with Art. And so she used to come on the show and do in-depth, like if you ever find the Linda Moulton Howell shows, they're, whether her stories are factual or not, she researches the shit out of them, you know. But the cattle mutilations is the thing where I think she's on the most, because she would actually go there and interview the ranchers who lost, you know, cattle to a rancher isn't, it's like your dog. Like they you know, they actually love the cattle, you know, like it's their money, it's their livelihood. They move them
Yeah.
across, they give birth to them, they take care of them. And just watching their livestock get eviscerated and all the blood's drained, and there's,
Right.
you know, razor sharp clean Ginsu knife like incisions in the corpses is
Yeah.
it's
They're like
genuinely disturbing. I have no answer for it.
yeah, they're like almost like flayed and like kind of like opened up, and there's like so many commonalities like in the way that it happens, and
But
like the
Nate
lips.
Doty sort of took advantage of her. She, you know, every now and then, like it's like that thing. Like eventually, George Knapp. That's why when I first wondered about Corbell, is George Knapp finally getting played by somebody? You know, like because
Mhm.
it can always happen. I mean, even if Corbell's being honest, he could. I don't know where he's getting his info from. You know what I mean? I don't really know.
Yeah.
You know, and he could believe it. Um, it helped more when Lazar was willing to talk to them. That's when I was giving him a
Yeah.
little like, I'll listen to this now. You know, like not just because the last thing Lazar wants is more crazy people attached to his name.
Sure. Well, like
Yeah.
yeah, and my take on like I really like Jeremy Corbell reminds me of like good Star Wars leakers, and you do every now and then see somebody who is legit, and then it like starts to like fall apart, like or like you are getting real stuff and then it stops, and that's more like, and in no way am I trying to suggest that Jeremy Corbell is going to go that way, but it's like that's my fear for him, because I mean like the guy has released video after video that has been confirmed to be a legit we don't know what the fuck it is thing, and it is kind of, I feel like the UFO community itself seems pretty childish and unfair
Oh
to
yeah.
somebody. It's like you're like biting the hand that feeds you kind of situation, and I can honestly identify with that to some degree at times, and it's like my only like fear is when you hit the down times, like every day, even still I will still get 15 DMs a day asking me when I'm going to drop this about some Star Wars thing constantly, and
Like you got a whole vault of all, you got all the
yeah,
scripts back there,
eh,
and you're just thumbing through them
right,
like I do the photo archives book,
or
you
or
know?
or 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 I do, and it's like I either don't have anything, or I have a lot, but I can't release it. Like as soon as I could talk about something, I totally love to. It's like what I do, what I love to do. But it's like the same kind of thing. But like I'm curious as to how he's going to handle that period when that comes for him. Like that's my analysis of him, is what's going to happen when he has a true dry spell. And I think how he acts in those moments is going to pretty much define his legacy, probably. Because when you get down to it, like Knapp and Corbell and Elizondo, those three dudes are probably like the central players at the moment, especially. Unless some wild stuff happens and the players change between them, but if things continue, like these guys are going to be kind of a part of human history in a weird way.
Well, let me add one thing in this. Read some of the chats. The
Yeah.
thing about Elizondo is I first heard him on Nap, like Nap would bring him on, and I was like, all right, this is cool. This is kind of like our version of Nick Pope, in a way. But and then I heard one interview, and it might have just been a bad day because it happens to us all. But he was like saying that basically people discrediting him were being racist to him, like UFOs racist. Like you kept using the term, they're being racist to me because they don't take me seriously. I'm a UFO. It's like racism, and I'm just like, I'd chill out on that one.
Yeah.
What I mean? Like someone should have been like, hey, dude, this is, I don't need to go there. Like, so it could just be a bad day.
Yeah.
But I mean, you just never know, especially with people that work in the DoD. Like when you said, when you think people go in, they get, what did you say? Did you say they get more conservative or more liberal?
When, like, for instance, on I saw, I watched a lot of interviews where I think that spy techniques and stuff like that is just fascinating. And one of the common themes I've noticed over hearing spy stories, that they always say that they go in very liberal, or liberal, like as liberal as like your standard college student is. And after they see the world and other countries outside of our American society, that's when they become ultra conservative, because they feel a bigger need to protect. They feel a bigger need to hold on to the things that worked in the past that we've established. And then they also, like, kind of the bleeding heart liberal side kind of dies out when they see people dying in cement bunkers and like living in alleys and stuff like that.
Well,
like
I served during a time of no war. Like I literally got out the last of the generation with no war. Like I never thought that'd be a thing, but it was. And even then, I'd see guys go in, and my buddy and I were super liberal, and he turned ultra conservative in the military, and in front of my very eyes, like to the point where I didn't even know how to. I mean, I grew up with this guy since the 4th grade, and I had the hardest time dealing with that. Like I was writing a Star Wars fan film with him in '98, like 98, 99. And we were going to like do like an animatic, like just an animatic and time it out and do voices and stuff. But before YouTube, I was like, I know where we'll put it, theforce.net. I don't know. But I saw that happen. Yeah. Actually, it was based off Taras Kass, if you can believe it. But
oh, nice.
So, but to the point, I did see that happen. And it didn't happen to me, but it did in a small way. In that when we first rolled into Iraq, I remember feeling like good about it. Like, that's right, we'll kick these guys' asses in like 3 weeks and be home. And then after the 6 months, when Rumsfeld, like, I'm like, oh, this is gonna go on forever.
Yeah.
And I was like, what a horrendous mistake this was. And that's when I first realized, I'm like, did I get radicalized? Because that was a term they were using along radicalized religion. Did I get radicalized in the military? Even though I was considered super liberal, like, did I come back changed? And I had to think, I got to really like tear apart myself for a post, from 2003, 2004 to 2006, 7, and 8. You know what I mean? Like, I had to really deconstruct, what did they do? Because even though I went in not caring about the military and grew up in the military, I wasn't going to let them get to me. They somehow got to me too, like they can get to you.
Well, you're living in a culture. I mean, either way you want to take it, like you could go in with, you go in with from your own culture, but military culture and that service culture and all that, it has a it's all there. So you're going to pick up some of it no matter what. You know, if you live with a bunch of people and live someplace, you're going to end up sort
Especially
of.
after the nightmare of 9/11, you know,
Yeah.
and like what that experience was like, you know, which we
Right.
had never seen anything like that before. So,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. Yeah. That was like maybe like the more recent generation's most traumatic, event. That's when it felt like the good old days are done. Like,
it's the
okay.
one scene of Revenge of the Sith, man, that gets me every time I see it was when the Jedi Temple's on fire. It's literally the 9/11 shot,
Yeah.
you know? Like, I mean, it it's a nightmare to watch. I mean, I sat in the theater going, you know, I don't know about this movie. Then I saw that and I'm like, bravo, Lou. I mean, like he didn't do it distastefully. It
No, no.
legitimately, you know what I mean? Like that's the point he was making, that this is a watershed moment, as Stephen King would call it, you know?
Right.
And that was the first time I'd seen it really, this one right here, right? Like here,
Yeah.
right? Like I'm behind it, right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah. That very realistic plume of smoke.
yeah.
And it's like, and not to in a cheap way try to divert the conversation back to the UFO stuff, but when if they did come at us with full disclosure, like, would it be as traumatic as 9/11 for a few days? Like,
Hmm.
the big Elizondo quote is when he said, like, how would people feel? He said, like, somber. You know what I mean? And it's like kind of this thing where you have to reevaluate reality. And I do wonder if it's going to be traumatic. Will it just be overlooked? Like we live in such a weird time when, like, huge things will happen about the pandemic, and then, like, people forget about it in a news cycle 2 days later, but, like, we're still
Two
going
days.
through it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And it's like, and like, as horrible as that, like I was talking about before, that apartment complex that collapsed in Florida was, it got way more coverage than the fact that the government was, like, releasing things saying, yeah, UAPs are real, which is their way of saying UFOs are real, dummy.
Yeah, 100%. I mean,
I
it's
mean, it's
when they go, we don't know what and it was funny when the report first came through. It was funny watching the AP spin it, where they're like, government denies it's this or something, and it's like they didn't say that. And I read the article; they didn't say that at
yeah,
all. They said we don't know what that is,
right.
you know. And I'm like, and then they eventually changed the headlines like 48 hours later. But I was
I
like,
saw that.
is that yeah? I'm like, this. It just takes me right back to the Phoenix Lights, where I'm like, whatever that was, if it was two or three different things happening at the same time, regardless, what is undeniable and totally provable is the blackout that occurred in the media the day after,
Yeah,
you know, and for a month or two until they came up with this coordinated story and the drawings in the USA Today with the balloon behind the ridge. And I remember this drawing where they're like, and here's the balloons and they go up and down. And I'm like, now they would say they're drones. But they 97 are saying they're balloons, you know? And I'm like, well,
yeah,
if that's your technology out there, then you got drones in 97. You're not using balloons. You
yeah.
know, like I'm not stupid. You know, like you, like come on. You know, if you got holographic technology, you're not using balloons. You're just using the terminology we understand in '97. We know what a balloon is.
No,
So it's
I have, like I said, I have a family member in the military, or was in the military, and was connected to the drone programs. Knows more than he could ever tell me about drones. Like, he'll be in an orange jumpsuit if he told me everything he knows about drones. And and when it comes to those videos, he says fuck no. Like, fuck no. Like, those, you know what I mean? Like, those aren't drones. And it's pretty, I mean, it's pretty wild when you think about it, because, like, we're heading towards something right now. And will we ever know, like will it happen in our lifetime? I don't know, but either way, like, this is going somewhere. And are we preparing for it, or are we putting our head in the sand and trying to pretend like it's not happening? Like, and when you hear about, like, for instance, me and you watched a video on a man he was in the military, And I think this is around 96, 97, I think.
97, March,
97,
April
March.
97, Phoenix
Yeah.
Lights time.
Yeah, and there's I guess a UFO crash. The military guys surround it. I believe he approaches it more than he's ordered to. And he says, in like the craft crashes, he says, into the side of a mountain. And the one thing about this, and I actually asked the question on Reddit, and our UFOs, I don't think I got like a good answer. At least if I did, I didn't see it yet, or a clear answer. But I was watching Elizondo's my guy. I keep watching all his stuff. I've seen like every time he does something, I watch it. And Elizondo, in one of the interviews, just drops, well, the Department of Energy knows more about UFOs than anybody out there. And I was like, what the fuck? Like when I heard that, I was like, the Department of Energy? Like
that's why they're in Stranger Things.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
The funny thing about that Department of Energy, as a kid, it was a name that always stood out to me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why. Like when I was a kid, I was just always like, that is a crazy name, the Department of Energy.
Of energy.
You know, like it always sounded spooky to me. Like I'm like, that's a broad term. Nuclear energy? What kind of energy? You know, like what does that mean? You know, like and then now that, go ahead and continue where you go with it, because it's interesting how that ties into the story.
No, that was the thing is he says like these governmental agencies were there. I'll try to remember to put the link to the video in the description. I should have done that already or had it for you guys in the chat. But he shows this, or he talks about this experience, and he says that he drops the Department of Energy was there. And was that compelling, or was that really normal? Like if I was to be a faker in 1997 about a UFO crash, would I have known to drop the Department of Energy in that story?
No, you would have said the Men in Black.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, you would have maybe the smoking man, right? The cigarette smoking man, or you know, the CIA or the FBI. The Department of Energy, again, like it was something that always stood out to me when I was a kid, but I didn't see it relate to the paranormal until Stranger Things.
Yeah.
You know? Like, and I was like, finally, someone else thinks, because I was just like, see, cause my wife knows, I'm always telling her, that's a great word, that's a great name, you can use this. She's like, whatever. And when they use it, I'm like, I told you that would be great for paranormal. Yeah. Stranger Things, guys, get it, you know? Now make a mall. And then they made a mall. Like,
yeah.
Finest mall ever, created for the screen.
Yeah, my drummer sent me that video, and he's like, this guy is either telling the truth or he's just completely insane. But he was like, you gotta watch it. So I watched it, and as I'm watching it, I'm like, okay, you know, and like I was like looking for like little tells that he's, you know, little signs that he's faking it. And when I thought I saw them, then they were things that were confirmed. And I was like, okay, so I'm over analyzing him. And then, but he gets that, when he says that moment about Department of Energy, that's when I'm like, holy shit. Like that seems like, and I don't know if that's me, if that's just me putting a connection there, that's not really a big deal, or if it is, but it seems to me like that is a component of the story that gives it some authenticity.
Well, the thing I was looking for was, okay, this guy is enlisted in the Marines. He is in a little bit before me, but roughly in the same era.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, all right, is he going to talk like an enlisted soldier, you know, E0 through 4? And when he's like, yeah, my sergeant, E5, E6, E8, sergeant so-and-so, sergeant so-and-so, and I was on the LAF on the back of it. And I was like, all right, the guy's talking like a typical E0 through 4 guy. You know, he's using the same nomenclature that we would have used if we were just describing going down range to Hohensfeld, to gunnery.
I could only imagine if he hadn't, you would have been like, stolen valor, stolen valor.
Cawthorn!
By the way, chat, look up stolen valor videos if you never have. They're hilarious.
I feel like that's a whole series waiting to be made.
Yeah.
You know, like one of those like Die Hard on a something movies, you know?
I know. I want McBride. The dude from I want him to play a guy who's caught on a stolen valor video, and then it just goes from there.
And he curses like a military guy would too, because I was, as a kid, I never cursed. Not that I watched Eddie Murphy Raw since like the day it came out. You know, I was into all that sort of hardcore comedy, but I didn't curse it doesn't even think to me to use curse words. And then after just 16 weeks of basic training, it was F word every 3 seconds.
Yeah.
Like that's the one thing I can tell you the military did to me easily was just give me the worst vocabulary known to man. It was everything's a nomenclature acronym, FCP, whatever, get my Coke money, my UAP, blah, 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 my,
Right.
everything's a nomenclature. And you curse like a storm,
Yeah. Yeah. So Rick asks, hey guys, what's your take on what is that? A new Anunnaki?
The Anunnaki and the Sumerians. He's talking about the chariots of God.
Okay.
The stuff that, the idea that there's these alien races that came here for gold. It's roughly what the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull kind of started with.
I remember that book being like, hey, yeah, they're basing it off of Chariots of the Gods. I'm actually ignorant of it though. I mean, I know like the what you just said, but I don't know much more about it. Like I like Nazca lines and stuff like that. I think all that stuff's fascinating,
right?
But to me, that was never like good enough. Like it's like
very 70s. It's of its era.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very like, and I always wonder, like I have a really, because I sit and draw for long periods of time, I'm always thinking of time as in, okay, when I was doing this, I was 15 or I was 19 or I was 24. And I'm always thinking like, what was going on then? What was I thinking then to now? What are things that I thought were serious then that I'd laugh at now? And what am I going to laugh at now? 10 to 15 years that I, just didn't take serious at all.
Is Ray Romano going to become funny to me? I hope not.
I saw it. The fly.
Oh my God. He said the word funny. Yeah.
Yeah. So on the Anunnaki and the Chariots of the God thing is very of the 70s, I feel. I mean, it's the same with the guy who bends spoons, right?
Right.
Yeah, the spoon bending dude.
And then in the 90s, you had Spoon Man.
So yeah, well, we sung that entire album to Barstow, from San Diego to Barstow once, and it was just Spoon Man. And it was with my girlfriend's family who was religious. They were like those conservative homeschoolers that
was it like Spoon Man come together?
Like
were you in a cult? Were you in a cult, Buzz?
Their family was cultish. I wasn't. Right? Yeah. I liked the girl, and
that's how they get you. That's how they get you.
But they never got me. That was the thing. They tried, but like I was just too. I was very. I was not. You were never going to convert me to anything at that point.
Yeah.
But I don't think they knew it was about like heroin. Like,
yeah.
That's what I was sitting there going. I'm like, you know what the song's about, right? Like, I won't tell them.
Yeah.
We'll
have a good time.
Yeah.
I was gonna say was I kind of want to, like, there's all this literature I want to like get caught up on that I want to know more about now, just to have like the base for interpreting what's going on and to see what maybe there is some truth in this stuff, or maybe this theory is that sounded wacky 5 years ago. Maybe it's worth looking at now. But
you want a good experiment? Just go listen to Coast from the 90s.
Yeah.
Like literally, it's a great little sociological, anthropological experiment. You want to see where the paranormal stuff was, listen to the people calling in the 90s and what they're complaining about. The one that stood out to me around 2016 when Orange Turd fucking showed up was the Heaven's Gate cult in 96. Yeah. Because at the time I was like, I had my own theories about this current cult we're dealing with now. And I was thinking about Jonestown, and I hadn't thought about like, did we ever go through a cult? And then I was like, Heaven's Gate, didn't we do that? And then listening to Coast, Art was having the Heaven's Gate people on for months before that happened. And they would come on and talk about it was a UFO behind this comment. They're going to go up there. And then I'm like, well, what happened when they killed themselves? And Art went off the air for a while. He did not want to even approach that discussion. He's like, I had nothing to do with it. They were just guests on the show. But like, that's one of those people it's like, when Riley appeared on Coast to Coast, he used to be a serious guest on Coast to Coast.
Riley, he was on Stern.
Yeah, he was a serious guest. He had his handler, the guy who would go on Stern, and you go, oh, his handler's a goof, his agent.
Howard, I think you are an asshole.
But he would call in and talk about and he would do the weird molecular
Yeah.
the molecular high make a hiney ho thing that he does, the Jamba talk, and he just makes up languages and shit. But that used to be serious, and then Howard and them heard them on that, and then he had kind of run out his steam on the coast to coast circuit around 2010ish, 2007ish, and then Stern had him on there.
Yeah.
So it is one of those things where if you go back and listen to those coast to coast, but then you'll hear something every now and then that holds up incredibly, like the ghost to ghost people with the EVPs. That Brendan and the female and the guy, like the EVP stuff holds up. Like you're like, I still don't have, no one has explanation for this,
Yeah.
Some of it's still incredibly weird.
God, on a complete side tangent, the one thing so like paranormal investigators go and do their thing and not knocking it, respect it if that's what they want to do. The one thing though that I cannot abide is the fucking spirit box. Something
it's fake. It's fake.
It's that is just so fake. It's like it's oral pareidolia. If you're going to throw a bunch of sounds together, you will eventually get something. If you ask enough questions, it will eventually seem like something talked back to you. It's just like, that's like, no, it's like, so what we died, and all of a sudden we have the ability to bring radio signals from all over and take pieces of sounds together, stitch them together and put them. It's like, it's just such a dumb idea. And like, that's where on like paranormal television shows and stuff like that, I just totally check out when they start doing that.
Yeah, I can't watch any of that stuff. Like, I don't, like I said, the only thing was, there was once when the Ghost to Ghost people, they were at an abandoned, insane, it's not an asylum, but it's like a facility in like Russia or something. So they're the only ones there. This thing is decrepit and rusted. And it was just a place where they used to, when people they were on the spectrum, they'd go there and just torture them for life, right? Like Return to Oz, the opening to Return to Oz. And they caught this sound of this girl like being drowned in like water splashing. There's no running water.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, look, that's a compelling thing to listen. They were recording them on tape and this whole thing. And so at that point I go, well, there might be a way to have residual. If energy is residual, there might be something where, if it was a traumatic enough experience, I'm willing to at least say that's possible, because what do I know? Especially when you think about, like, I used to think about, like, what if, the idea in quantum mechanics that when you move one particle's here, but on the other side of the galaxy, it could be moving simultaneously in conjunction. I was like, what if ghosts were just residual things on the other side and these particles are moving in tandem? So the residualness is something that you're seeing. Or in this case, a parallel dimension is moving simultaneously. I mean, we don't really know. Yeah. But when they're like, we can make compelling TV out of it, 24 episodes a season, you know what I mean? Yeah. 7 seasons on, then I'm like, that's impossible. There's not that much content, guys. And you find that out with Coast to Coast, like the content would just loop after about 6 months. I mean, that's why Art needed those call-ins, for people would call in and just make up shit, because you literally there's not enough new stuff. And that's what you're talking about. What happens when Corbell runs out and it gets dry? What does he do? That is, you're right. That is 100% the moment of truth,
that's when he has to be like, I'm making a documentary about JFK now, and he has to be cool, and hopefully that's what he does. But I mean like, even, and this is just me almost having a primitive mind, if you will, but it's like when you think about things like the fact that if you take a cassette tape and put it in a tape recorder, you can record your voice on that, and we can do it digitally. Like, we could film things, like there's all of these ways of making these impressions. And it does make me go, yeah, maybe there's weird circumstances where bizarre things happen at the same, but like at the same time, like whenever I go on like YouTube and watch even like the most compelling of ghost stuff or whatever, it's almost always like, I don't know, because it's like,
never the poltergeist,
and you can never get like, it's like the water bottle flies, but it flies off camera from the kitchen where they're filming for some reason. It's always like, there's just always something, or like, that just makes me go like, I can't, I guess I won't ever buy it until
I'm prepared, bro.
You are, man. Yeah. You got days of green screen on me.
I've been planning for this my whole life. To have someone that I could actually chat to about this that is as intellectually ready for nonsense as I am.
Luke says, I was driving home from tour one time. I was passing through Kennesaw, Georgia, heading into Atlanta, and I saw a light in the sky that looked like a bright star.
Well, that was one of the things I didn't want to cut off Elliot when he was talking about the ball thing. So one of the things that Redfern was talking about was that the militarized was looking at this thing called ball lightning. It's an actual phenomena that can occur where lightning can occur as a ball, and they were trying to find a way to weaponize ball lightning. Like that government's actually actively doing that in the 60s.
Yeah.
So like I'm like, you know, it could, you know, the ball lightning occurs naturally. Can they weaponize it? Can they make it move around? Can they have it suddenly appear somewhere? You know?
Yeah. My family used to own property at Walker Lake in Nevada. It was like my dad and my grandparents.
Skinwalker Lake.
Yeah, right. They used to vacation there and stuff. I went there. It was terrible. I hated it, for what it's worth. But it was just super hot and the lake was kind of drying up. But my family, like, they had seen ball lightning several times on the lake, bouncing around it and all kinds of crazy stuff like that. But at the same time, like, my dad having seen it so many times, when people try to say something's ball lightning, he's like, nah, that doesn't look like that.
That's how I felt about when they said the Phoenix Light, the ones on the ridge, the ones that the whole city could see.
Yeah.
Because there was that, and then there was the triangles that were moving. So it was like 2 or 3 different incidents occurring at the same time. That the ones that were in plain view, they were saying were flares, like these flares that were on balloons.
Yeah.
And I watched that thing for like an hour, man. You know, they weren't dying out. And I was like, well, I don't know what a military flare was like. Well, a year later, I'm at my first nighttime exercise and basic training, and they shot out military flares. I'm like, ain't weren't no flares.
Yeah.
Like very quickly. Because the internet wasn't like you could just go on YouTube and find military flares and check, you know, like,
yeah.
But I sat there going like that. It was not what I saw, not by a long shot.
Yeah. Yeah. The way that information spread back then, you could come up with a very bogus cover or explanation just to shut something down. And if the media were willing to roll with it, then there you go. Like it's over. Whereas now, I think that that's one of the more interesting things. Like I was talking about before, like one of the analogies that you hear is that a lot of people in the government are afraid of like the next, the Phoenix Lights, when it gets caught and everybody could see it and it's captured on all kinds of different cameras, and who knows what else, like what else will be able, what's going to happen, or what's going to happen when one of these things fucking crashes again and it's not in Roswell. What happens if it crashes, in San Diego? You know what I mean? Like it's like, and then everybody's going to document it very quickly. Like Homeboy, when in Roswell, would have had all that stuff on Instagram before the government could have sent them a telegram saying, say something else. You know what I mean?
Right. It's what happens one day when it just crashes into fries.
There you go.
You know?
Yeah. There it is. And yeah. So, but it's like somebody, if they don't move towards disclosure, might end up in a scenario where all of a sudden UFOs are real, aliens are there, we can see them, or we have proof beyond the shadow of a doubt. The glove does fit, we can't acquit, and it's all there. And
Jackie Childs comes out, they're aliens.
They're aliens. Yeah. And no,
extraterrestrial, phenomenal.
But
supernatural.
but whoever has been currently propagating the lie at that point is going to have a bad time. But also, like, the government, like, it's, if they don't come out and really start getting authentic, because that's like the other thing is, like, did you hear about the UAP report that they gave? Like, the classified version was only 17 pages.
Yeah, so Sprague and them did a good job. If you want the link, when it came out, he did it was like a 2 hour, almost 3 hour long dissertation on it, where they got like 15, 20 people to give their different UFO followers and broadcasters and podcasters to give their breakdown of what was in it and their reaction to it. And I think that was the best it's like a broad take of what was in it. And that the one that came out was only 10 pages, but the actual one was 10 times. It was like 80, 70 pages long, was the classified version, was like way longer. And that was where they were getting into like, we don't know what that is. And it doesn't go back any further than 2004. Yeah. And it's just like, yeah, so where's all this stuff from? Because to bring up Stephen Greer, I thought all of this was going to happen in 2001 when they did the Disclosure Project. And was it DC? Mm-hmm. Do you know about the Disclosure Project?
A little bit, but so, you probably know a lot more than me.
So and this so was like, this.
I know it happened. Yeah, and then I heard that it kind of got sidelined. Yeah,
it got sidelined. But he was supposed to bring he brought a bunch of military people, 20 different officers, to a hotel in DC. It was going to be this big, really, big discussion about the military UFOs. But 9/11 happened. No one cared. It was like the week of 9/11 or something. I mean, when you say, oh, wow, coincidentally speaking, it's not a conspiracy, right? I'm not saying they literally caused 9/11 to get out of this, or that a condo building, they dropped a building in Florida to keep people from knowing. But like these things do seem to coincidentally happen during items of news that they're able to amplify larger than this story. And this is not the first time I was 22 when this happened. So I was like, oh, this will be the thing. And then 9/11, they're like, nope, now we're not talking about how the military. I did not know at that point that the military had been experiencing UFOs shutting down or turning on nuclear reactors. So a story about my family, my uncle, my whole family's military. Mm-hmm. My grandfather fought in the Pacific World War II. My great uncle,
mine too.
Yeah, my great uncle was on Omaha Beach. None of his kids, most of his kids served except my one uncle who went into law enforcement. My uncle Dennis served in the Air Force in the 70s, and he got stationed at those missile silos in the Air Force, like literally the opening to war games, right? Mm-hmm. They have to be in there and monitor these missiles, and they had this problem where these rabbits were setting off the sensors. And they could trigger a nuclear bomb, trigger a missile.
Wascally wabbits.
And they wouldn't fix it. And he decided to go around the chain of command. He wrote President Carter a letter about it and they stripped his rank and, made his life hell for a year and a half until he got out. But I think about that scenario, wow, that was just a rabbit triggering a sensor. If my uncle had been sitting there and a freaking UFO triggered a nuclear weapon on or off, I know he would have flipped out. He would have been like that scene in War Games where the gun comes out. Yeah. I think if people haven't watched War Games in a while, go back and watch it, because that opening to the movie, people think Matthew Broderick, they're playing a game, it's fun. That opening of the movie is extremely real and tense, and that's the paranoia that existed at the time in the 80s with the Cold War and Russia and everything.
Yeah, I love that movie as a kid. That was one of my favorite movies.
It still has a great theme song.
It does.
It has one. Anytime I'm doing research on the internet, I like to put that one on a loop.
Doing computer stuff.
Yeah, doing computer stuff.
Yeah, no. To go back to the encounter that kind of made you pick that background when we're talking about the UFO that hits the side of the mountain, and then the guy, he hears them talking to him telepathically, and then but when he ends up, the Department of Energy shows up and all that, they end up putting him on a gurney, and he says cuffing him to it, and then they
arrested him is what he said.
Yeah, they arrest him.
This is the part where I think that the person filming him was not a very good interviewer. Mm-hmm. So first he says he was stationed out of Arizona in March or April. So I was thinking, is this a Phoenix Light tie-in thing? And then he's automatically in the jungle. They got deployed for something. And I'm like, jungle where? I don't understand the geography too much about this. Maybe he couldn't specifically say where, which is fine. But there's some jumps. There's jumps in the storytelling in the way that, when you first learn to tell people, tell people about scoops, if you don't actually go through the list of things, as you need to tell people, you can just jump to the ending of a story, and in your mind you thought you told them. So the problem I have is, because I'm a visual guy, I have to make certain that whenever we're talking about things, that I'm not visually seeing what I want to talk about, but I don't actually say it.
That you're actually verbalizing it, right?
It's so hard to do, especially here when we're not editing, and we don't get to go back. And did you actually say that thing? I didn't say that thing. Did you finish your sentence? I didn't finish my sentence. So there's some geographical issues right there. And when they said they arrested him, he said that him and his two sergeants weren't supposed to be there, even though they got deployed to go check out to see if this thing was one of our craft that was downed. Apparently they weren't supposed to be there looking at that, is what it was.
It sounded, yeah, like when I heard that, I found that part confusing as well. I took it to mean they were given orders to like approach to a certain place and then report and do nothing else, but he went in further than the other guys too.
Okay, so like Travis Walton went up to the red light, right?
That was out
of the truck.
I took it. He pulled the Travis Walton. He didn't stay in the truck.
Now that actually can get you into a lot of trouble. I'll tell you how. So like when we would go down range in Germany, we'd have training ranges like Gießen and Hohensfeld. And Hohensfeld was a live training round range. That's where I was when episode 1 came out. Remember I told you about that book?
Yeah.
I was down there. And that's where you actually drive your tank into a box, like down into a box. Like they call it a box, but it's like a hole in the ground that you just pull into it, so your turret's just sitting at ground level.
Yeah.
And you war game, you live down there like it would be during war times. And if I just got out that tank and ran down that range, that's live ammo. You at any point you could get blowed up. Somewhat maybe a more training mortar goes off, because sometimes when you're throwing live rounds, they don't go where you want them to go.
So if you have like that one dude in Solo who just goes
exactly like that dude in Solo. Yeah. This is how I understand that. Didn't ever have to do it in the war, but I trained for it, so I understand that. And so if his orders were to just go there and report, and he got out, you can get into, especially if you're of the lower the rank you are, the more in trouble they'll get you on the stupidest shit, because they can throw everything at you because you hold no rank to talk back. And in the Marines, it's 10 times worse, because the Marines literally are you're disposable, but you're also like you're not allowed to think for yourself. As at least it exists at that time from my friends who were Marines, and they just had to do exactly what they said. So if he did anything outside the bounds of what they were told to do, they would arrest you just to scare the shit out of you.
Right.
You notice he was never charged with an Article 15 or anything like that. But I injured myself in the military, and I did physical therapy for 1.5 years. They couldn't find anything wrong other than I was having issues. And I wanted it fixed. But at one point I get this new chain of command, and they just arrested me one day.
Really?
They just went in there, arrested me, no charges. They just arrested me and then sent me to my room, and then sent me to Jag, and Jag didn't know what to do with me because I didn't have anything wrong. I didn't have any. They were like,
what are you here for? TV show from Channel 4 in the 90s?
Yeah, like those guys. Yeah, the chick and the dude, and it was like A Few Good Men with Kevin Pollak, and we're right back to that story. And you were hanging out with Kevin Pollak, and you're like, that time you were in Jag. So, but I understand. I know that feeling of someone being arrested and not knowing, what are you guys doing? And I could hear it in his voice. I'm like, I have experienced that. I was cleared, obviously, and not sent to federal prison, but I had to go before a board and explain to them, like, what is going on? And then got the apology. But they'll do that. People who are in the military who have rank over you will do that just to intimidate the shit out of you. In the way that you remember, like in Making a Murderer, like they'll lie to underage kids to get them. They'll just say, you killed your family. Why'd you kill your family? I didn't kill him. Well, I guess I did. They want to see if they can convince you to admit to something you didn't do.
Right.
And so it's one of those types of things. I feel like if this is a truthful story, I didn't hear that part got me, because I was like, yeah, I sense that's a guy who has some PTSD from that experience. Maybe even more than the alien craft itself.
Yeah. Yeah. Like when I was watching the video, and they're telling him, we could just dump you in the jungle. I was like, you know what was terrible? Was out of my mouth was fucking do it. That's what I would have said. I would
you
be
have
dead.
that fighter in you.
I would
you
be
know
dead.
What I mean?
I would be dead. I would be dead. Like,
like,
I mean, you know, obviously I didn't serve in the military. I didn't go through basic training, and probably would have beat that bullshit out of me in 1 second. But at the same time, like, I was like, dude, yeah. I mean, like, he was just like, yeah, I know. Like, but it sounds terrifying. It sounds like they make a lesson out of you, or they did anyways.
I was fortunate that when I grew up, my family, again, were military. They played military mind games with me.
Yeah.
Like, just the way my dad would treat me, the way he was treated in the Vietnam, and I'm a freaking kid. But so when I got to that point, I just learned, okay, it's like that, that Venkman when he like rolls his eyes, like the Stripes kind of moment where you're like, all right, what are we gonna do?
You're like, I know this song and dance, kind of.
Yeah, but I'm not gonna say anything. Like, I've just learned to shut up. Like, all right, like, whatever, like whatever we're gonna do, you're gonna put me in jail, making buffers for the next 20 years, like whatever. Right. But you don't really know if I didn't have that experience, who knows how I would have really reacted at a point, or how this guy was you saw he was in incredible shape. He was super thin, he was lean, and maybe he was one of those guys who was acing all of his PT tests, who's super aggressive dude. But then you get to that point where you're already in a shock of seeing something you don't understand, and now they're threatening you with dropping your body in the jungle. I mean, how would you really react? You would like to think you'd react in the most sanest way, but maybe you would be super aggressive. Or some people, man, I saw people in basic training who knew they were getting out of basic training in a certain amount of time. Yeah. I saw some people there who were in incredible shape just mentally lose it because they weren't allowed to do whatever they wanted to do. Yeah. Like, just that idea that I can't get up and eat a Snickers bar drove some guys nuts, and I was confused by that, but it happens.
Yeah, no, that would have been me. I would have lasted 10 minutes. No,
until we talked about Star Wars,
You're like, hey man, Chewbacca could do it. And I'd be like, okay. No.
We all talk like that on the tank once, the Chewbacca roars. I got him going with that. So dumb.
Yeah, no, and that's the thing is, like, in your estimation, and not that you could speak for the military now or anything like that.
I am the spokesperson for the military
and for planet Earth. No,
yes.
with that in mind, like, do you think that culture is going to be able to get past this and move beyond where it's at right now? And like, is it going to, like, they're supposed to be moving to, like, you could report anything. My door's always open. Is that like that?
It'll come from officers, not from the enlisted.
Yeah.
And this is a mistake I made. I didn't know that I could enlist as an officer, and then they'll send me to college, and then I go to the military. Mm-hmm. I went in. Some people are made to do certain things. I'm not made to drive tanks and blow things up. Yeah. Like, I'm made to think for a living, and I thought it would be fun to not be stuck behind a desk. And if I didn't like running, so I was like, I'll do tanks. I should have done something much smarter or been an officer. Like, I found that very quickly.
How come, like, every time before we start the show, you're like, let's fuck shit up. Let's go. And then I start, and then you act like all chill. But I mean, I see that side of you before every show.
It's the MK Ultra training they gave. Every night before sleep, we took the acid pills, and then they showed it. They holographically projected Jane Fonda and some aliens out there. So we got the full deal.
Like I was saying, man, like when it comes to like conspiracies and stuff, I just don't like ever really buy into them. Like, it usually takes too many, but too many people to keep a secret for like long. It just, none of it actually really ever makes too much sense. And then, like, I just look at what people think in the stupid Star Wars community about anything, from how information goes to whatever, and you hear it and you're just like, what are these people on about? It like literally made me where I just don't believe in conspiracies. But then when you get to the MK Ultra stuff, that's where it's like, wow, this is wild. Like, really, the same doctor was with Manson? Really? The same doctor?
The problem is radio personalities weaponize, questionable historical data to further ratings. Right. And I watched, Art get out of politics and do that. And I love the Art Bell show. I love Coast to Coast and Dark Matter, Midnight in the Desert. But I watched that show sort of like turn it into ratings. And then I watched Alex Jones show up on Coast to Coast around 2004, 2005 ish. And then how all of the government's there to try to take away our weapons. And then that turned into the cult that we have now. So I've seen how that info can be used if you're clever and you have like you have the ability to get people to pay attention to you. You can photo collage your own little cult together with various bits of info. That being said, the government and various governments do stuff all the time. The government isn't one thing; it's a bunch of things.
A bunch of people
acting autonomously or non-autonomously by what rules we don't know. I mean, the last 4 years were an example of. I mean, just look at the last year when people couldn't. We couldn't get toilet paper delivered, PPE anywhere, and yet people were getting PS5s. I don't, you know what I mean? Like, if you put that in a TV show, you would have been in the 90s, you would have been like, that's ridiculous. That's not
right.
I mean, every movie we ever saw showed us that when there's a pandemic, there's going to be a lottery to get the vaccine. And it turned out we need to hold a lottery for you to go get one because people won't get it. Like that is the strangest thing. I never thought I'd see that.
Yeah, I saw a thing with Homeboy going like, in today's climate, like we wouldn't have eradicated polio. You know what I mean?
No.
It's just like we just wouldn't have. Yeah, and that's kind of I chalk it up to people being burned so hard by corporations and the government over time, so that their trust is broken, and they have a broken trust, and then they grow up in our form of capitalism that the freedom of choice really means like Coke or Pepsi at best. I'm not trying to get like into like a mall punk kind of thing right now, but it does kind of like come down to that, was that we have this like either or mentality, and like it's like those things are like a little bit more complicated than that, and we don't like it to be more than that. And like that's where I start to go like, like disclosure. I want it because I want to live in reality, even if it's bad. Like I know I've known people who like have had a cheating spouse and were like, I don't want to know. I just don't want to know. And I'm just like,
my parents went through like 5 divorces, so I understand.
Yeah. And it's like, and I'm like, I want to know. I want to know everything. I want to live in reality, in all of its grandeur and its misery. I want to know exactly where the fuck I am at in human history right now. And
I have found that real disclosure, like real info, seems to be a baton handoff more than it's a moment.
Mm-hmm.
So like the Stephen Greer thing was a thing that got handed off to basically Paranormal Radio, which eventually ends up in the hands of Tom DeLonge. Or really, like before that, like George Knapp keeps bouncing it around. Tom DeLonge hands it to Corbell. You know what I mean? Like, and so like who's, but they don't, it's just that they're so close to one another makes me think we're closer now than we were, because that's a 15-year difference, you know what I mean, between the last time and now. And I didn't think when Tom DeLonge like kind of disappeared and it went to Corbell, I was like, who is this guy? Is this one of those dudes that's coming in to like fill the void, and we got a group of people, and I'm like, what do I have to sign up for? Where's the book and the symbols? And It never happened. The biggest thing they got is Lazar's selling some drawings now. I'm like, yeah, big money. I know something about selling drawings. Let me tell you something.
Yeah, no, and I'm like, Bob got bills, and I want one of those Bob drawings too.
I want a Bob Lazar drawing.
I'm happy he's doing it. Like,
it's the most creative thing he could do is like draw, man. I want that on my wall.
Luke Jones says, "Oh, dude, they know." There's the dude who says it's recovered alien craft, and Lou says the dude that says that never lies. So yeah, he's talking about Eric. What is it, Eric?
The actor?
Eric Davis.
Okay.
Are you familiar with him?
No.
So yeah, Eric Davis, I believe, is a physicist. If I'm right, I think he's a physicist, and he basically works in the private sector, but has also worked on all of the project. He was like Lou Elizondo was on. Lou Elizondo builds him up and says he is basically the closest thing to an American savant that we have, that he knows of, and that the dude is just a genius, and he's done things for the country and the world that should be celebrated. Now, yeah, this is what he says though.
Yeah, this reminds me of the guy that the Patriot games was based off of. You know what I'm talking about?
But yeah, but I mean, this guy is, he is connected to all of this stuff, and and he gives talks about, he's given talks that are really fascinating to watch before he was completely classified, and he's worked on all the projects, and he's pretty much like going like, we need disclosure, like he's on board with it. He's like, yeah, it needs to happen. And he might be a part of the To the Stars Academy in some way, or was, or is, I'm not sure. Like, I actually want to like look all up. I want to like dig deeper on this guy, because according to Elizondo, this dude is made amazing like progress in all of the stuff that they have going on.
Maybe. I mean, I'm not gonna. I take away a lesson. I didn't grow up reading the Lord of the Rings books. I didn't like dudes in fuzzy underwear.
Want to know what my answer? This is, somebody's gonna hate me for this, but my answer to like Lord of the Rings: bring a book. Bring a book. It's so boring. It's so fucking boring. Bring a book so that we get something to do while you're reading it.
But it's the production of it that I love.
Yeah,
like how they did it, right? So I always get into that. But there was a line they were going on a Tolkien on the extended edition making ofs. And Tolkien was talking about the lack of information in World War I and how people would just assume things or make decisions based on what they thought to be true versus what is true. So one of the central themes of that film is the hobbits think this is happening, and the Strider thinks this is happening, and they don't really know. They have to assume it's real or not real. And it's like, what do you do in the face of... So I'm always careful, because like that's a really good moral lesson to learn. So it's like, I got to be very careful about just saying, oh, no. Oh, yeah. Unless it's fun, right? You're like, wrestling's totally fucking real, man. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The Undertaker really did fight The Undertaker. That happened.
I watched dude.
That happened.
Yeah, it's real.
Yeah. And Leslie Nielsen was there. So, yeah. I mean, he's a witness. Call him in. So, I mean, I think about that. Like, I don't really know. I don't know anything about the guy. Where I get into a little bit of like, it goes into my... let's go look into this scenario, is I don't really, after spending time with the Philip Corso case, I put the Philip Corso scenario, that idea that we took this recovered craft and just handed it to industry. I get that idea of it, but Philip Corso himself and the specifics of all the stories don't actually match up with history. Like the way the technology he describes, like CDs and stuff, came about, it's pretty well documented how this stuff was built. When I first heard it, I bought the book. I'm like, this is amazing. Oh yeah. And then when you actually do more research and you find out who developed, how the microprocessor came about and how the laser system came, like it's actually a pretty easy documentable through line. It's not grand wizardry.
That's what they want you to believe, dude. Yeah, no. The To the Stars Academy is claiming to be in possession of exotic materials now. I don't know if you saw that.
If they know Lazar, it's possible.
You know what I mean?
I find that fascinating how that's the one thing he's bounced about over the years, whether he did or didn't, and the idea that he would just say he did because I'll never know. But that's a guy who, like, if it happened, if Lazar really did manage to take some of the stuff, like, just the idea of getting it out of there, I would like to know how that happened. Did he put it up his bum? Like, did he put it in a baggie and swallow it and then have to pull it back? How did that happen?
That whole thing is like strange too, because like, it's like if he was there and coasting, it means that he like literally probably stole it before his wife was cheating on him and he knew about it. You know what I mean? Or they knew about it. Like he was already. Yeah, I mean, you would have to think, because he started kind of getting pushed out. So
here's how if it's true what you just said, let's say that's the scenario that actually happened, right?
Right.
It makes sense in that if Lazar felt he wasn't able to do what he wanted to do there, he would do it at home. He's a guy who gets impatient. He's just a guy who gets impatient really quick with bureaucracy. Like, we're not allowed to do this. I'll take some of this home and work on this at home, you know, and I'll do what I want to do, and I'll figure out.
Who's the guy who owns Skinwalker Ranch? What's his
Bob
name?
Bigelow?
Yeah, Bigelow. I was watching an interview with Bigelow and I think George Knapp, and they were talking about how Bigelow hired Bob Lazar to work on a UFO project, start cracking the tech, and he goes and he supposedly like fills the workspace up with furniture, and when they go to check on him to see what he's doing, they fired him because of that. And like and they kind of like laughed it off like that's Bob. And then, but I was kind of like, did he just go put a bunch of furniture there to make room to work on it at his house because he's like a kind of guy who works on shit in the garage? Like, is that, you know what I mean? I was curious about that. I wish the interviewer, I don't think it was Knapp. I wish Knapp had asked him like more about that, you know, because that's bizarre.
Or that he's literally a guy who likes to take things apart. And if they just had theoretical ideas and info they had to go through and whiteboard stuff, he's not a guy who's going to write the formulas down and figure things out theoretically. I think he's a guy, he put a rocket engine to a car because that sounds like a fun idea for him.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like he sat there and thought up ways to do it, you know, or thought up it's not even an amazing original idea. It's just like he's like, it's like when someone has an idea for a fan film, but then they physically make the fucking thing. Like, it's not that my idea was original. It's that I'm the one who took it to completion and now you can watch it. I went through all the steps. Yeah. And this guy means he must be some form of self-motivated. He's not thinking in the normal way. You know, he's creative. And I could see that the scientist, the Werner von Braun type dude who was interested, I could see him going, oh, this guy is like a dude who's going to be able to physically use stuff and think about it. I mean, I actually do stuff with it. I don't see him being much of it's just my impression of the guy over the years has been like, if Bigelow hired him to sit in a room and look at, you know, even if they had like a piece of that foil, they said that, remember like Corso was like, we have a foil and you could never crumple it. You know, what would Bob do with that? Like, what would he really be able to do with? He could zap it. I mean,
a line of Coke.
Yeah, no, possibly.
In that Corvette.
It up.
In that Corvette? Yeah, no, I don't know.
Yeah. So I don't think he's a guy who's going to help solve the UFO problem because he couldn't solve it when he was doing that stuff. He's a guy who will creatively do something you just don't expect. Like he was like, I was running a photomat and photocopies and doing 3D graphics, you know, like that's everything a creative person does that doesn't want to get a normal job would do in the 90s. I worked at a Kinko's, you know what I mean? I did 3D animation. Like I'm a creative dude who doesn't want to have a normal job at a bank, you know?
Right.
Like in this, and then eventually those ideas or those avenues run out because everyone has a computer in front of their lap now. Everyone has the ability to make their own graphics. And what's Bob Lazar going to do? Make a Fiverr? You know? So like, I just think like he was doing everything a creative type would do at the time. And then now the only thing he kind of has left is like moving the materials. He can still ship, you know, get in the different chemistry set stuff and ship it, right? Because he has an interest in science, but I don't think he's a guy who's going to go to college and do formulas.
Yeah, and that's one of the interesting things about, like, if for some reason, let's just pretend somebody goes crazy and we have like real disclosure, Roswell's real, Bob Lazar wasn't lying, all that stuff happens. Bob Lazar is going to be a very rich man when he sues the government for erasing his whole fucking degree and everything about him. Like,
but what's crazy is he could have been a very rich man in the 90s in that he had a movie deal with Fox and he turned down every script. He had approval on what they were going to go with. So he got an option, but he would have got points if this thing had gone to film. And he didn't want them to Hollywoodize or war games up his life. Right. The chase is on and Bob's on the run and now he's got to get in the UFO, get out and, you know, like Firefox with the UFO. Like every time they added that to the script, he's like, that's not the way it happened, you know?
So I'm going to open up a brothel for deep cover.
Right. And so like their end game thing of like, we got to put him in something because we paid money for this was to just make him a character in Independence Day.
Yeah.
So this Brent Spiner thing is Bob Lazar. It's like the best we could do is now you're a wacky scientist at Area 51, which looks like Fry's when you go in there, the way they got everything set up.
Yeah.
So that's the end result of it.
Mark Hamilton says, if advanced civilizations have got to the point of creating AI at the singularity, That's only milliseconds after us on the cosmic timetable. That AI should be transmitting itself across the galaxy. And yeah, I mean that's like the whole thing about it, that is like they didn't just get here in 2004 like the government acts like. Like right
Well, that
now
was
or
Jacques
anyway.
Vallée's book I told you about. Jacques Vallée wrote this book several years ago that only covered documented cases of UFOs in the 14th century China and stuff like that. Like you could actually get, here's this thing that was in the sky and it did this stuff. And it's not like out of a biblical text. It was actually dudes writing down historical shit. So like that's a book if you were like interested in seeing some historical stuff. And Jacques Vallée, for people to know, is the doctor that is based off in Close Encounters of the Third Kind, the one that goes around and rounds everyone up. That's who he's based off of, is Jacques Vallée. So Knapp's good friends with him.
I'm gonna open up a UFO themed fish fry called Jalak Filet Fish. Mark Hamilton says if events. Okay, we already read that one, right?
Wait, the value menu needs to be called the Singularity. And it's just single items, for $1.
Yeah, no, and that's like another side of all of this, that like when the disclosure stuff that whatever we're having now first started, I started to like wonder, like, if the singularity supposedly going to be around 2044 ish.
Oh, you got the date? Hold on. Alexa.
That is the time frame. I don't know if it's changed with the pandemic, and because you can't buy a 3D card right now.
Well, they delayed Batman, so
yeah, delayed Batman. But no, but around 2044 was the expected time frame for it. Well, I started to wonder, like, at one point, my radical theory was, what if the government understood this, and what if they put trillions of dollars and raced to it, as opposed to waiting for it to happen naturally, and wherever it starts to go down kind of first could potentially, I like to think of the singularity as a moment when capitalism dies, and not because I hate capitalism necessarily, but because you don't need it anymore, because we could build nanobots and all that kind of jazz, right? Well, I started thinking, like, what if the government raced there and got there, and then this stuff that we're seeing has been the fruits of those laborers. But that was my on the spot theory. But then as it went on, we started to see that, like, no, we've been seeing these Tic Tacs for a while. They used to call them lozenges.
The cigar thing, the cigar shape ships, literally there was counts of it in the 1800s in the Old West.
Yeah,
the cigar like blimps that would land, and dudes would get out and walk around, and they'd pull up the news articles that would write about it, not in the jokey section of the papers, they really came out. They thought they were part of the Wright brothers, or part of flying around explorers. Like, they had no idea what they were looking at. So there is some weird stuff. I don't know what that is. I'm shocked. Here's the thing. The reason why I get some of that, some validity, is the fact that people aren't making videos and TV series about it, right? Like, it's out there. Why hasn't that appeared in these 24-hour alien show on the History channels? It's all this other stuff that's easily, like, entertaining, that has quick answers, or, like Storage Wars for paranormal info.
I have a couple of friends who make paranormal television shows on various cable networks. I don't want to accidentally say who they are. And it's their end. From their end, it's complete bullshit. They are to make something. It doesn't matter if it's true. It doesn't matter. Like, most of those shows are garbage. And like, I know because they told me. And then, like, I have a family member who's all into that stuff, and I tell them, like, hey, I know the show's garbage. I don't know, it could be real though. Fuck.
Yeah, a buddy of mine does a lot of various DP work for, like, Netflix and various different companies out there,
Yeah.
And when I first met him around 2016, 17, I was watching a lot of MasterChef Australia. And I was like, it's actually pretty good compared to the American version. He goes, look, it's all reality television. It's all bullshit. I've shot it. I refuse to work on reality TV. It's all fake. And I mean, not just fake, like they really conjure up everything you see on camera. So he's like, I just feel icky. I'd rather just do plate shots for Westworld. He did the last shot, Making a Murderer, that shot right at the end of the opening credits. Like he did that one.
Okay.
And so I'm like, look, everyone knows your stuff because I can tell you about it. You know what I'm talking about. Like,
yeah.
So, but he'd rather do that than the so-called reality TV. And I get that. I mean, watching people manipulate others to create a scenario is essentially the Truman Show.
It's like Jeremy Corbell was I don't know. TMZ is a weird thing. It's like it has like a bad rap because it'll like report on like Lindsay Lohan, taking a crap or something, and you're just like, okay, I don't care. But at the same time, like the TMZ stuff is usually pretty on at the same time for what it's worth. Like it's on. It's like that's one of the things about it. That's like it's trashy at times, but it's on. And like Jeremy Corbell was like doing a. He did like a tweet the other day on like for like a Hulu show that is like connected to that stuff and that side of things, and he's like, your government's lying to you and all this stuff, and knowing what he knows, like he's not wrong, but at the same time, he got really defensive when somebody else started calling him out on it, and then that dude from the basement office was like, well, you need to quantify this, and then I saw a couple of days later that the dude from the basement office said that he had a real like woo woo moment. And I'm like, did Corbell like call him up and be like, look, bro, here we go. Like, I don't know. I have no idea. I didn't follow up. So I don't know if there was more to it, but I thought like all of that stuff. I'm like, what is going on? And, by the way, John says Professor Simon Holland's YouTube channel has an interesting explanation for Rendlesham. I'll check that out. Lily, hi Lily, how's it going? Movie They Live. Humans use shades to see ETs and experimental quote jab is for a computer to view humans. I actually love that movie too. That's one of my favorite films. I actually like for a time when that movie like was totally into obscurity, for a time I started writing a rock opera version of it. Me and my drummer on the side, like when Randy wasn't there yet or something like
very
that.
Jim Steinman.
Yeah, it was cool. One of the songs is actually from that. Has been reworked, and I'm putting it on my next record. And one last self promotion bit is my last record, the last 4-track record I made, was about the sort of our conversation tonight to some extent, where I was talking about I have a song called Kool-Aid Cult Revival, and that is about the Trump era, and it's about the nostalgia we feel in Star Wars, and like how all of this stuff can be used against us, and in a bad way. Like not all of this stuff is good. Not all of nostalgia is like a positive thing, and we are all in these various cults, and it's kind of creepy because like you have like the question, what's the difference between a religion and a cult? What's the difference between fandom and a cult? These things are like, and what's the difference between believing in UFOs and having a UFO community? And it's all of these things are kind of hard, and they make it hard to contend with reality. And
Heaven's Gate proved that in our lifetimes, like they literally got a room and drank Kool-Aid again to jump onto a comet.
I literally in my shitty voice sing about Comet Hellbop in one song. I go there, but Lily goes on to say, people showing up with pseudo magnetism derived from the interaction of graphene oxide with the hydrogen present. And whoa, I don't know. Okay, yeah, you lost me, but a point taken.
Amy Martin could decipher that.
David says, crap, I'm 2 hours late, laugh out loud. Hey, well, we're going long, actually. I didn't even realize it. I see. You have a conversation you really want to have. And not to say I don't want to have the Star Wars one, but I want to have this one because I've been waiting for this one all week. But are you good to go for a few more minutes?
For a few more minutes, yeah, I can do that.
Okay, yeah, I don't want to keep you up too late away from your family and everything. David says, going to start from the beginning, so don't take my leaving as an action. Just keep up the good work. No problem, David. When you get here, just so you know, you've time traveled. Okay, Buckshot, what do y'all think about Michael Tillinger? I like some of the theories, but some of it can be a bit reaching. Are you familiar?
No, over the last several years, I told you, like, my way of dealing with paranormal news at this point, because there's been this loop for me,
Mm-hmm.
it has been to just allow the cream of the crop to get to like the nap level and above. So when
Mm-hmm.
I start to see it there, then I pay it some attention. Not to say George Knapp is the only authority, but there's a few other places, like if Amy Martin's talking about it, George Knapp is talking about it, some of those Bell Gab dudes would talk about it. Like if it gets to the certain level, like Ryan Sprague will bring it up, then I'm like, okay, then this is like worth pursuing. Otherwise, ever since YouTube, like we're doing this now, but it's not like you and I are out here trying to break the paranormal. Let's get to the meaning of it. We're just having a fun
Think for
conversation.
yourself, Rob.
Yeah.
No.
Don't be a freak, just do it. I really want Shia LaBeouf to get help first. And then once he gets help, I want him to do a paranormal show, like more than anything in the world. Like,
Yeah. Buckshot says, would also love to hear your thoughts on David Adair's story. He has told the same story for decades.
see, if they tell me the story, I'll know it. I told you I'm really bad with names. Like,
Yeah, me too. And I'm like at the level of this where I was like watching, I was all into it as like a kid. And then, like I said, I had the Donnie Darko moment with God where I was just like tired of asking the question because
right.
nobody's going to give me the answer. If the government knows, they're not going to give me the answer. And then when we started getting the developments recently, that's when I started to get more towards the, okay, I will entertain this again because they're admitting that there's something here. Maybe answers are coming, and maybe there is a reason to take it more seriously. And not to say I need like the government to tell me what's real necessarily, but if they were never going to tell us and I don't have a personal encounter, just what does it matter? You know what I mean? And that's kind of like where it ends up going, or how you end up feeling about it. Like my grandfather, he was interested in that stuff to some extent. I don't think he ever had any like he had paranormal experiences, but he never had like an alien experience and that kind of paranormal experience. And but he was interested in it. But like that dude lived his whole life, saw the atomic bombs and all that kind of crazy stuff, and he didn't get the answer. And geez, that is so unfair that it like our government probably knew one way or the other, and he didn't know. Like it kind of pisses me off. And that's like, I hope we come to a place where the government realizes that if they tell us the truth, there might be lawsuits like by Bob Lazar, for instance, people who they like just dragged through the mud and like defamed
See,
and
it's
stuff
the
like that.
simplest explanation ever is what amount of lawsuits are there for this sort of thing?
Yeah.
Like that
Yeah.
is, and if there were holographic experiments being performed on soldiers, what about that too? Like
Yeah.
it opens up a bigger can of worms of liability. I mean, I hate to, everything comes back to lawyers. At the end of the day, that's what Star Wars is about, is law.
Yeah.
But there is an element of truth. Like these cats just, they don't ever want to be in a position where they have to cut out of their budget or go to jail,
Yeah. But it's like, at the same time, it's like, for instance, like the dudes at like Tuskegee who they did experiments on and gave
Mm.
syphilis and all kinds of horrible shit like that. I I think that if those Americans who did that need to be held accountable, hopefully they were. I don't know how it washed out, but or if they were ever faced justice for it. At the same time, the people in that position today didn't do that. And so it's up to them now to start doing the right thing. And if they do the right thing, they're going to be known as the ones who did the right thing, who were honest with the American people who they work for. And if they do that, it's like all of the bad things that happened, well, we'll just have to contend with that as being part of our government's history, but we could celebrate the fact that it stopped. That's what we would hope for anyways. And it's like that's what trips me out about all of the stuff is I'm like, why? If it's something is so bad that they don't want me to know, then I want to know because it means that everything's a lie. it means none of this is real and this is all a facade. Like this civilization that we have is going to end in 2 days or whatever it means, like for us. Who knows, right? Or
we got nothing
like,
left to lose, so here's the deal,
Yeah.
folks. Like that would literally be that would be a good show to do, where it's just like our version of 24 hours, but it's like we know there's 24 hours for the planet to like not to be destroyed, so the government just tells everyone, it goes, now
Yeah.
deal with it, and it's just what do people do, and then they blow up.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like I don't, you know, I really think that it just facing reality is
They're
the
coming to get you,
important
Jason.
thing here. Yeah, you hear them. Yeah,
It's just they're on their way.
That first they silenced our guest. Now they're here to silence our host. So Buckshot goes on to say, Adder's story in a nutshell, he claims that he was taken by the government to look at a UFO at Area 51. He said it was because of an engine that he built and that the UFO had the same engine.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on what area. If he means S4 or something, I'll have to look into it.
Yeah, I'll look into it too. And if we end up doing this show again next weekend, we'll that'll be our homework. If we're able to do another one, then that's what we will do. Is we'll like talk
kind
about
of
that one.
do we have?
Right? That's homework.
It's my syllabus. Hold on.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah. So like you know that's just like where, yeah, it's just like if it's that bad, then like let's just get real about what the world is, and then maybe, you know, maybe you're not creative enough in the government to solve it, but maybe some other genius is. And then
that's what Lazar says about, you know, they just don't talk to one another. That there's just too small a group of people trying to figure out that you need a much larger community.
Right, right, yeah. I totally agree with that like perspective, and I think that's where Elizondo seems to be coming from as well. Is like he keeps saying like he wants to start the conversation. The conversation is important, and it's like, you know, and some conversations are rough, and sometimes at the same time after you have the conversation though, if you feel better, because that's like the other side of it is like there even in, I mean, I think it would be not the best use of your time, but you could probably get down to UFO disclosure and all of the bullshit that's gone on with it. The fact that they keep saying this doesn't happen, and then we learn that it did. Then we learn that if they lied about that, like you could probably draw a correlation to that, but in some anti-vaxxers right now that won't get that don't trust the government because it's one notch in the thing that makes it go like, I don't know what to believe about what you guys say. Like, it's like I don't think I want to live in a society where we trust the government, not outright, but I also don't want to live in a society where we can't trust the government. You know what I mean? And that's the kind of like where I feel like this falls.
Over the last several years, especially the last 4 years, the phrase "it was the best of times, it was the worst of times" has just become more clear to me. You know, like what that actually means.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. Like that's where we're at. So. But yeah, Buckshot agrees. Buckshot says, I agree that disclosure needs to happen very slowly. Okay, so he thinks it has to be slowly. Yeah, I think it's hard to make the argument that in essence, if there is any disclosure going on, that's what it's been, a slow rollout. At the same time, you know, sometimes it's better just to rip the Band-Aid off. I just really like, you know, it's like if it rocks your religious beliefs, so be it. Maybe your religious beliefs need to be rocked. That's the way I look at it. I mean, if and it's the same thing with if it rocks your idea of what science is, well, clearly it needs to be rocked because it's.
I think religious people will deal with it better than like Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Yeah, I think so too.
Honestly. Yeah, I think it's the hardcore science the science community that goes, this is ridiculous, could never be. In their minds, they have literally made up the fact it could never happen.
Yeah.
So like, I'm more I never thought I'd say that because I was always a Neil deGrasse Tyson fan, but over the years watching him, just this is the hill he wants to die on. Like, it's impossible. And then when you're like, there's military footage, why is it all grainy? Because it's the thermal image Nimrod on a tank. I know that our tank gear was developed in the 70s and the 80s. It's all thermal imaging. I learned to tell every tank that the Russian military had and the Chinese military had by their thermal signatures.
Yeah.
This not in color. Like, that's, guys, this is, I mean, I was a grunt and E nothing, and I know this. So Neil, like, I mean, that's when I see that, I'm like, you're not helping yourself.
The interviewers need to take him to task when he says that shit. And so are you then saying that this is a government conspiracy?
Because that's a story in of itself.
Yeah,
elaborate.
Yeah. And if and if that's what it is, then that's, I mean, like, there's a lot of, I think, like, it seems about, I think a large portion of people believe that this is a conspiracy, that the technology's ours and it's to get more money. You hear it constantly. I think it's kind of a joke because you don't really you could just, there's easier, more realistic, believable ways to get more money.
Well, as that interview said, you just sell weapons and drugs. Like,
yeah.
And you could say it's conspiratorial, but for a fact, that's what was happening in Afghanistan with the poppy fields.
Yeah.
And that whole movie Tom Cruise made about the cocaine plane. Like, the CIA cocaine plane,
Yeah, or Air America.
Iran Contra, Ollie North, like, I mean, this is within our lifetimes. I think with the Neil deGrasse Tyson thing, and we'll wrap this up, it's just, I look at that and, these are people that like to say things like, support the troops. We're going to support the troops. Well, what happens when the troops tell you there's UFOs? They're sick. They're telling the lies. It's not the truth. Like, that is such a thing you say to make yourself feel better about dudes going over there and get their limbs blown off. But if they tell you a piece of information you don't want to hear about, right, then it can never happen.
Yeah. We have we're at a weird place in our culture when it comes to dealing with the truth, hearing somebody's story, and mental illness all at the same time. It's like there's these like three hurdles. It's just like, somebody has a fantastic story, let's hear it out. Somebody makes an amazing claim, an outlandish claim, or even an accusation, let's hear it out. But then let's actually do the actual legwork to figure out if there's any truth to it.
Phantom Menace is all blurry footage. They had to reshoot it. It's going to be
delayed. Right. It's true. It's true. But it's like today we had a friend on who brought us this amazing, or a couple of amazing images, but we'll look at this one one last time before we go. That's really quickly, and like the other one is a little bit more pretty, but I'm too lazy to load it up now. But I mean, you have that, you have this amazing image. And like, he has it, and it's like, it may be a UFO. It may be amazing that we're looking at it, or it may be that it's a long exposure caught a bird. At the same time, if we don't talk about it and we just,
it's the other one has the 3 though, which is why I'm like 3 birds. Like, that's the one that I'm like, it's hard.
Okay. I'm going to try not to be lazy for once here. Okay. Wait.
Crash the whole stream right at the last second.
Probably that's probably what's going to happen, because it doesn't like it when I do this usually. Wait. Whoa.
I'll talk about the Bad Batch for an hour. See, you killed yourself. He knocked himself off the stream for real. Folks, he did it. I blame myself. I do
that. It does not like it when I do it during okay, wait. Okay. I think I got it that time. And then I have to share it one last time. And I can't thank him enough for coming on. And
yeah, it was awfully awesome of him.
You know what I mean?
Okay. Kiwis are so nice.
They are, aren't they?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah. Look at that. I mean, that is amazing. That is just so cool. Like,
and they're various widths and distance. See, there's not like the same things being duplicated, or it's like some kind of bokeh, like thing, And I don't see any I mean, it's a compression on a compression on a compression, but I don't see any JPEG seams somewhere, or some smooth Photoshop gradient blending, which I can spot. I know an overlay layer, like, from a mile away.
Yeah, it's like there was a UFO video that a guy caught who was like a homesteader of some kind, and the skeptics say it's a long exposure, and it's a helicopter. And it's like, okay, maybe, I don't know, but I kind of think that if there were 3 helicopters there, he would have seen them. Right?
They do look a little like Flight of the Navigator from that angle, though, don't they?
No, they look like straight up UFOs. I mean, that's you know, an amazing
Billy
image.
Meyer.
And for what it's worth, like, he came to me and he used his real name and all that stuff. I dealt with fakers in the Star Wars community a lot, and I can tell you that it's very easy to spot them if you know how. And yeah, I mean, he captured this, and that really happened, and he really thinks that they could be amazing. He doesn't know, which I thought was a really good perspective to have, but it's like pretty cool. And so yeah, if anybody, you know, wants to come and show us anything, talk about anything that's happened to you, or show us anything, like I'm willing to, like, look at it
for 4 hours.
Yeah, if the story's hot, we'll hear it too. I mean, we'll do UFOs After Dark or something like that. You know what I mean? Yeah,
UFOs gone wild.
Right. Yeah, UFO babes and the humans who love them. But
UA Poon. So bad.
Yeah, there's a file called the POON file in the government. I'm gonna do a FOIA on it. But anyways, thanks to everyone for coming, hanging out with us, and talking about the UFOs and the paranormal and all of that jazz. And thank you, Rob, for showing up on Saturday to do it. I appreciate that.
You got it.
And yeah, and it was a good time. And I think we'll have Jason back pretty soon. He had a thing he had to do, so he couldn't make it today, but I hope he comes back, because he was interesting to talk to about the stuff as well. And
I was actually, I watched the whole episode. It was good.
Yeah, he's a fun guy. So if you want to support the channel, you can become a Patreon supporter, and you can get an audio file version of this, but you won't be able to see the UFO. I'll try to put the pictures up on the Patreon, like on the picture, so that way if you're just listening to this, you can see it. I don't think he'll mind that I do that. Hopefully he doesn't. And then but if you also want to just support the channel, you could become a channel member supporter on YouTube. And this week I'll probably talk about an idea or two for an event that we can do for our supporters, to like do something fun, you know, like watch a film together or something like that. And it'll be kind of like a commentary, but also where we're all in the chat together, so we're all watching the movie at the same time. So it allows it for it to be a kind of like an event. I don't know if it'll be
Starballs.
You just want to watch Spaceballs? I'll watch Spaceballs. We'll talk about
Spaceballs.
But
Starballs was the other one.
Yeah. But yeah, and like I said, if anybody wants to share their experience, I'm open to like hearing it. I won't ridicule anybody for sharing it. It doesn't mean I'll believe it, but I will be respectful of hear your story, because I think it's fascinating. I think like hearing his story was one of the most fun things that we've done in a long time, you know, that I could think of anyways, at least since the pandemic anyway. It's been pretty fun to hear a guy talk about his UFO stories, and your story is gonna give me a nightmare. I'm afraid that a dirty, stinky hippie is gonna show up in my house and go, shh.
You'll never look at Raising Arizona the same way again.
No, I won't. But anyways, thanks again, Rob, and thanks to everyone. And we will see everyone on Monday with the Star Wars show. And if some news breaks, I'll probably jump on. But if not, I hope to see you Monday.
Not about spaceships.